They said a Luna without a mate bond was worse than dead. They were wrong. She was something far more dangerous. Tonight, at the Royal Moonlight Gala, Luna Morel would learn that humiliation wasn't the end of her story. It was the blood-soaked beginning. And before this tale reaches its final breath, you'll understand why the most powerful wolves in the kingdom should have killed her when they had the chance. Stay until the end, hit that like, and drop your city in the comments so I know my pack is listening. The Royal Moonlight Gala blazed with 1,000 candles arranged in crystalline chandeliers that dripped from the vaulted ceiling like frozen tears. Luna Morel stood at the entrance of the grand ballroom, her fingers twisted in the pale blue silk of her gown, and tried to remember how to breathe. The fabric was borrowed. The shoes pinched her feet. The silver circlet in her dark hair was the only thing she actually owned, a gift from her mother before the fever took her 3 winters ago. She had practiced her entrance for weeks. Chin up, shoulders back, eyes forward. But nothing had prepared her for the weight of hundreds of gazes turning toward her like wolves scenting blood on the wind. The ballroom stretched before her in a cathedral of wealth and power. Marble columns rose toward frescoed ceilings depicting the first shift, when the moon goddess herself had breathed wolf souls into mortal bodies. Between the columns, the elite wolf clans of the kingdom gathered in their finest silks and furs, their laughter echoing off stone walls that had witnessed centuries of pack politics and royal bloodshed. Luna took one step forward, then another. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack through bone. Nobody moved to greet her. She recognized faces from the capital. Lady Meredith of the Ironclaw clan, draped in emerald silk that matched her calculating eyes. Lord Voss of the Shadow Peak Pack, his scarred face a map of battles won in the Northern Territories. They watched her approach with the same expression hunters wore when tracking wounded prey through snow. The whispers started before she made it halfway across the floor. "Isn't that the Morel girl? From the border packs? What is she doing here?" Luna's jaw tightened. She kept walking. The marble was so polished she could see her own reflection beneath her feet, a ghost moving through a world that didn't want her. At the far end of this ballroom, on a raised dais draped in crimson and gold, sat the royal family. Luna's eyes went straight to him. Prince Casimir Thornblood, heir to the throne and future alpha king of the entire realm. Even seated, his presence dominated the room. Dark hair fell to his shoulders. His face was carved from the same stone as the mountains that ringed the capital. He wore black and silver, the colors of the royal bloodline, and when his pale eyes swept across the crowd, grown warriors looked away. Luna had seen him only once before, 2 years ago, when his convoy passed through her village on the way to inspect border defenses. He hadn't looked at her then, hadn't even known she existed. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was the mate calling, when unmated wolves of age would stand before the prince and the moon goddess herself would reveal the bonds written in starlight and fate. For weeks, noble daughters had been arriving at the capital, their families spending fortunes on gowns and jewels and political alliances. Every one of them believed they might be the one destined to stand beside the future king. Luna had no fortune, no political connections, no ancient bloodline to recommend her, but she had the dream. The same dream every night for 6 months. In it, she stood in this exact ballroom, and when she met the prince's eyes, the mate bond snapped into place like a rope pulled taut. She felt it, the recognition, the certainty, the absolute knowing that they were 2 halves of one soul split by the goddess and finally made whole. Her grandmother, before she died, had called it a vision, a true seeing. Luna clung to that word like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. She stopped at the edge of the dais steps. Above her, Prince Casimir leaned back in his throne-like chair, one hand resting on the carved wolf head that formed the armrest. His expression gave away nothing. The High Chancellor rose from his seat beside the royal family. He was a thin man with silver hair and robes that dragged on the floor as he descended the steps. In his gnarled hands, he carried a staff topped with a crystal that caught the candlelight and threw rainbow shards across the marble. Silence fell like snow. The Chancellor's voice rang out across the ballroom. "We gather under the gaze of the moon goddess to witness the sacred calling. Let those who seek their fated mate step forward and be judged by fate itself." Luna's mouth went dry. Around the ballroom, other young women began moving toward the dais. She recognized most of them. Lady Seraphine of the Northridge Pack, blonde and beautiful and cruel. Vivian Blackthorn, a distant cousin of the prince himself, with eyes like chips of ice. Celeste Ravencroft, whose family controlled the southern trade routes and half the kingdom's silver mines. They arranged themselves in a line. Luna took her place at the end, trying not to notice how their gowns cost more than her village produced in a year. The Chancellor raised his staff. The crystal flared with white light. When you stand before Prince Casimir, if the bond exists, you will know. The goddess marks her chosen with fire and certainty. There is no mistaking it, no denying it. He gestured to Lady Seraphine. You first. She glided up the steps like she'd been born to stand beside a king. When she reached Prince Casimir, she bowed, then met his eyes. Nothing happened. The light in the ballroom remained unchanged. No spark, no fire, no invisible cord snapping into place. Lady Seraphine's smile faltered. She bowed again and retreated, her face carefully neutral, but Luna saw the rage burning beneath the surface. One by one, the others approached. One by one, nothing happened. Vivian Blackthorn stared at the prince for so long, the Chancellor had to clear his throat. Still no bond. Celeste Ravencroft tried to hide her disappointment behind a practiced laugh, but her hands shook as she descended the steps. Then there was only Luna. The Chancellor looked at his list, frowned, looked at her, frowned deeper. You are? Luna Morella, of the Greystone Pack. Border territory. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Greystone Pack was small, poor, forgotten. The kind of pack that existed only to serve as a buffer between civilization and the wild lands beyond the kingdom's reach. The Chancellor's frown became a scowl. This is highly irregular. The calling is reserved for, let her approach. The prince's voice cut through the air like a blade through silk. Every head turned toward him. He hadn't moved from his relaxed position, but something had shifted in his pale eyes. Something sharp and considering. Luna climbed the steps. Her legs felt like water. Her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. She reached the top of the dais and forced herself to look at Prince Casimir directly. He was more terrifying up close. Scars traced his jawline. His hands, resting on the chair arms, were scarred too, the knuckles misshapen from breaking against bone and stone. This was not a prince who ruled from behind walls. This was a warrior who had earned his throne in blood. Their eyes met. Luna waited for the fire, the certainty, the recognition from her dreams. Nothing came. The seconds stretched. The ballroom held its breath. Luna stared at the prince and felt absolutely nothing beyond the wild hammering of her own terrified heart. No bond, no connection, nothing. The Chancellor's voice was almost gleeful. It seems the border girl has wasted our time. There is no mate bond here. Luna couldn't move. This wasn't possible. The dreams, her grandmother's words, everything had pointed to this moment. Prince Casimir leaned forward slightly. His voice was low enough that only she could hear. You came all this way for nothing, little wolf. Go home. Something broke inside her chest. Not her heart. Something deeper. Something she didn't have words for. She turned to descend the steps. That's when Lady Seraphine's voice rang out across the ballroom. Perhaps the goddess couldn't find a bond where there was nothing worthy to bond with. Laughter erupted. Not polite chuckling. Real laughter. Cruel and delighted and hungry. Luna froze halfway down the steps. Lord Voss's booming voice joined in. The broken Luna. That's what we'll call her. The girl who came to claim a king and left with nothing but shame. More laughter. It bounced off the marble and crystal, amplified until it felt like the walls themselves were mocking her. Luna looked back at Prince Casimir. He wasn't laughing. He was watching her with those cold, pale eyes, his expression unreadable. But he didn't stop them, didn't defend her, didn't do anything at all. She ran. Her feet slipped on the polished marble. She caught herself on a column, kept running. Behind her, the laughter followed like wolves on a blood trail. She shoved through the massive doors and into the torch-lit corridor beyond, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The broken Luna. The words chased her all the way out of the palace and into the cold night beyond. What Luna didn't see was the figure standing in the shadows at the back of the ballroom. He had watched the entire scene from behind a marble column, his face hidden by the deep hood of a traveling cloak. His hands, gloved in black leather, were clenched so tight the leather creaked. When the laughter finally died down and the gala resumed its glittering facade, the figure slipped out through a servant's entrance. He moved through the palace like smoke, taking corridors even the guards didn't know existed. In a forgotten tower room filled with dust and old weapons, he pulled back his hood. His face was young but hard, with eyes that burned like coals in a dying fire. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, the kind of wound that should have killed. He'd been at the gala for one purpose: to see her, to confirm what he'd suspected for months. And now he knew. The girl had no idea what she was, no idea what blood ran in her veins or why the mate bond hadn't appeared. But he knew. He'd known since the moment she walked into that ballroom, and every protective ward in the palace had flickered like candles in a storm. They should have killed her years ago, should have hunted down every last member of that bloodline and burned them to ash. Instead, they'd hidden her in a forgotten border pack and hoped the world would never notice. The man in the tower smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. They'd failed. And now everything they'd built over the past 20 years was about to come crashing down. Because Luna Morel wasn't broken at all. She was the most dangerous wolf in the entire kingdom, and she didn't even know it yet. Ball bag. Luna made it back to her tiny rented room in the lower city just before dawn. Her lungs burned. Her feet were bleeding from running through cobblestone streets in shoes meant for ballrooms, not fleeing. She slammed the door behind her and collapsed against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor with her head in her hands. The broken Luna. She could still hear the laughter, would probably hear it for the rest of her life. The room was barely larger than a closet. A narrow bed, a cracked wash basin, one window that looked out at a brick wall 3 feet away. She'd spent the last of her money to rent it for the week of the gala, believing she'd never need to return to the border territories, believing tonight would change everything. She'd been right about one thing. Tonight had changed everything, just not the way she'd imagined. Luna pulled herself to her feet and went to the wash basin. The water was cold. She splashed it on her face, then looked at her reflection in the tarnished mirror hanging on the wall. Dark eyes stared back at her, the same eyes as her mother, her grandmother. All the women in her line who'd been born with more hope than sense, believing the dreams and visions that ran in their blood like fever. Liars. All of them liars. There was no special destiny, no sacred purpose, just a poor girl from a forgotten pack who'd humiliated herself in front of the entire kingdom's elite. She started to turn away from the mirror. That's when she saw it. Just for a second, just a flash. Her reflection's eyes blazed gold, not the normal amber glow of a wolf about to shift. This was different, brighter, hotter, like staring into the heart of a star. Luna spun back to the mirror. Her normal dark eyes stared back at her. She leaned closer, searching her reflection for any trace of what she'd just seen. Nothing. Must have been a trick of the lamplight. Exhaustion playing tricks on her mind, but her hands were shaking as she backed away from the mirror. Bites. 3 days later, Luna left the capital before dawn. She'd sold the silver circlet her mother had given her to pay for passage on a supply wagon heading east toward the border territories. The merchant driving the wagon didn't ask questions, didn't even look at her twice. That was the blessing and curse of being nobody. People forgot you the moment you left their sight. The capital disappeared behind them as they rolled through farmland that gradually gave way to wilder country. Luna sat in the back among sacks of grain and tried not to think about anything at all. It didn't work. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in that ballroom, back on those steps. Back in that moment when Prince Casimir looked at her and saw nothing worth keeping. The broken Luna. By the 4th day of travel, they'd reached the border territories. The land here was harder. Rocky hills rose like broken teeth. The few villages they passed were small and suspicious, doors closing at their approach. This was where the kingdom ended and the wild lands began, where rogues and outlaws made their camps, where wolves who'd been exiled from their packs came to die or become something worse. The merchant dropped her at the crossroads outside Thornhaven, the largest settlement this far east. It wasn't much. A cluster of wooden buildings behind a stockade wall. A tavern. A trading post. A stable. Maybe 200 people total if you counted the scattered farms in the surrounding hills. Luna shouldered her pack and walked toward the gates. The guard gave her a long look but didn't stop her. Border territories didn't turn away bodies. They needed every sword arm and strong back they could get. Inside the stockade, the town smelled like smoke and pine and something sharper underneath. Fear. Luna had grown up in a border pack. She recognized that smell. The tavern was called the Broken Antler. Luna pushed through the door and into a dim common room that fell silent the moment she entered. A dozen faces turned toward her. Rough faces, scarred faces, the kind of faces that belonged to wolves who'd seen too much violence and expected more. The barkeep was a woman built like a boulder. She looked Luna up and down, then jerked her chin toward an empty table in the corner. Sit if you're buying, get out if you're not. Luna sat. When the barkeep brought over a mug of something that smelled like it could strip paint, Luna asked if there was work. The woman snorted. You running from something or looking for something? Neither. Both. Luna took a sip of the drink and tried not to cough. I can work. I'm strong. You got any skills beyond pretty and desperate? Luna's jaw tightened. I can track, hunt, read and write, do basic healing. I grew up border pack. I know how to survive. The barkeep studied her with eyes that had seen every kind of lie and truth. Finally, she nodded toward a door at the back of the tavern. Man in there is the settlement captain. Name's Rourke. He's always looking for bodies to run border patrol. Pays shit. Work's dangerous. Most don't last a month. I'll last. The barkeep's laugh was harsh, but not unkind. We'll see, pretty girl. We'll see. Mates. Captain Rourke was not what Luna expected. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe 30, with brown hair pulled back in a tie, and a face that might have been handsome before something had broken his nose and left it crooked. He sat behind a desk covered in maps and reports, scratching notes with a pen that left ink stains on his fingers. He looked up when Luna entered. Didn't invite her to sit. You're new. Just arrived. I'm looking for work. I was told you need patrol runners. Rourke set down his pen. He looked at her the way men in power positions always looked at young women. Calculating. Measuring. Deciding if she was useful or just another problem waiting to happen. What pack? Greystone. But I'm unaffiliated now. His eyebrows rose slightly. You run from something or get kicked out? Neither. I left. Luna met his stare without flinching. I need work. You need bodies. That's the whole transaction. Rourke leaned back in his chair. It creaked. Border Patrol isn't for soft city wolves. We run the perimeter every night, check the wards, look for rogue sign. Sometimes we find it. Sometimes it finds us. You know what rogues do to lone wolves they catch? Luna's stomach tightened. Yes. Then you know why most people don't volunteer for this job. I'm volunteering. A long silence. Outside the window, Luna could hear the sounds of the settlement. Hammers on wood. Voices calling to each other. Normal life continuing while she sat here trying to convince this man she was worth keeping alive. Finally, Rourke nodded. Fine. You start tonight. Be at the east gate at sunset. Bring a weapon if you have one. If you don't, we'll issue you a blade. You'll run with Sergeant Cade's squad. He'll show you the routes. He turned back to his maps. Luna took that as dismissal. She was almost to the door when he spoke again. Girl. She turned back. Whatever you're running from. His eyes were sharp. It follows people out here. Border territories have a way of stripping everything away until all that's left is what you really are. You might not like what you find. Luna thought about the ballroom, the laughter, the broken Luna. Good, she said. I'm done being what other people think I should be. Rourke's expression might have been respect, might have been pity. Hard to tell. Sergeant Cade turned out to be a woman. That was Luna's first surprise. The second was that Cade had a prosthetic arm, the kind made by kingdom artificers, all leather straps and metal joints that clicked when she moved. The third surprise was that Cade was the most dangerous-looking wolf Luna had ever seen outside the royal court. She stood at the east gate with 3 other wolves, all dressed in the dark leather and worn weapons of border patrol. When Luna approached Cade's single eye, the other was covered by a scarred patch, swept over her like a blade testing for weakness. You're the new blood. Luna Murrell. Don't care about your name yet. Most don't make it past 3 runs. I'll learn your name if you survive. One of the other patrol members snickered. Cade silenced him with a look. Rules are simple. She raised her prosthetic arm and ticked off points on metal fingers. Stay together. Stay alert. If you see anything that doesn't belong, you report it. You don't engage. You don't play hero. You sure as hell don't run off alone. Rogues hunt in packs. They'll separate you if they can. Separated means dead. Understand? Luna nodded. Say it out loud. I understand. Good. Cade turned to the rest of the squad. Standard east perimeter sweep. Ward stones first, then the ridgeline, then back through the old growth. We're looking for tracks, scat, kill sites, anything that suggests rogue activity in the last 48 hours. Torin, you've got point. Mace, rear guard. New blood runs middle with me. The gates opened. The patrol moved out into the twilight. Running border patrol was nothing like Luna had imagined. It wasn't the dramatic hunt from old stories, wolves racing through moonlit forests with victory certain. It was cold, methodical work. They checked each wardstone set into the ground along the perimeter, making sure the protective sigils carved into rock and wood were intact. They examined game trails for tracks that might belong to wolves, who walked on two legs more often than four. They investigated suspicious clearings and marked locations on Cade's map, hour after hour, mile after mile. Luna's legs burned, her lungs ached from the altitude. But she didn't complain, didn't ask for rest, just kept moving with the squad through terrain that grew rockier and wilder the farther they went from the settlement. It was past midnight when they found the kill site. Torin, the scout on point, raised his fist. The squad stopped. Luna smelled it a second later. Blood. Fresh blood. A lot of it. They moved forward carefully. In a clearing ringed by pine trees, they found what was left of an elk. Huge animal. Should have taken a whole pack to bring down. But something had done it alone and done it violently. The elk's throat was torn out. Its stomach opened. The ground around it was churned to mud with blood and thrashing hooves. Cade knelt beside the carcass, her metal hand resting on the torn hide. This was tonight, within the last 2 hours. Rogue? Mace asked. He was a thin man with quick eyes and a crossbow held ready. Cade shook her head slowly. Worse. She pointed at marks in the mud. Four-legged, but the stride is wrong. Too wide. Too powerful. And look here. She indicated the throat wound. Whatever did this has a jaw big enough to crush the elk's windpipe and cervical spine in a single bite. What the hell is big enough to do that? Torin's voice had gone tight. Cade stood. She scanned the tree line. Something that shouldn't be this far into kingdom territory. Something that usually stays in the deep wild beyond the mountains. Luna felt the hair rise on the back of her neck. What kind of something? Before Cade could answer, a howl split the night, not the howl of a normal wolf. This was deeper, louder. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing off the rocks and trees until the whole forest seemed to vibrate with it. The patrol squad went still as death. Cade's voice was barely a whisper. Run. What? She turned to look at them, her single eye wide. I said run. Back to the settlement, now. They ran. Luna had never moved so fast. Trees blurred past. Branches whipped her face. Her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. Behind them she heard it. Something massive crashing through the undergrowth. Getting closer. Don't look back. Cade's voice was a ragged gasp. Just run. Luna looked back anyway. Through the trees, lit by moonlight, she saw it for just a second. A wolf. But wrong. Too big. Its shoulder would have reached Luna's chest. Its eyes blazed gold, the same gold she'd seen in her mirror 3 nights ago. Then the trees swallowed it again. The patrol burst out of the forest and onto the open ground leading back to Thornhaven. The settlement gates were a quarter mile ahead, too far. They'd never make it. The thing behind them was gaining. Luna could hear its breath, could feel the ground shake with each impact of its paws. Cade spun mid-run. Her metal arm came up. In it, she held something Luna hadn't noticed before. A small silver sphere. Cade threw it behind them and screamed, "Down!" They hit the ground. The sphere detonated with a flash of white light and a sound like thunder. Luna felt the shock wave roll over her. When she looked up, the massive wolf was retreating back into the tree line, shaking its head like the light had heard it. "Move!" Cade dragged Luna to her feet. The squad ran the last stretch to the gates. Guards were already opening them, weapons drawn, shouting questions nobody answered. They made it inside. The gate slammed shut. Heavy crossbars dropped into place. Luna collapsed against the inner wall, gasping. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Cade was already at the wall, looking out through a gap in the stockade. Torin and Mace stood nearby, weapons still drawn, eyes wild. Luna found her voice. "What was that?" Cade didn't turn around. Something the captain's going to want to hear about. Something that means this settlement just got a lot more dangerous. She finally looked at Luna. Her single eye was hard. "You wanted border work, new blood. That's what border work really looks like. Question is whether you're stupid enough to come back out tomorrow night." Luna's hands were still shaking, but she met Cade's stare. "I'll be here." Cade's expression might have been approval, or might have been resignation to losing another body to the wild lands. Either way, Luna knew she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The capital seemed like another world now. That ballroom and its laughter belonged to someone else's life. This was hers now. Blood and fear and things hunting in the darkness. The broken Luna. Maybe that's exactly what the border territories needed. Ok. In the capital, 300 miles to the west, Prince Casimir Thornblood stood in his private chambers and read the report that had just arrived by royal courier. His face remained expressionless, but his hands tightened on the parchment until it crumpled at the edges. The report was from Captain Rourke. It detailed the previous night's patrol encounter, the massive wolf, the unprecedented aggression, the fact that something was pushing deeper into kingdom territory than it had in 20 years. But that wasn't what made the prince's jaw tighten. It was the final line. The addendum Rourke had included almost as an afterthought. New patrol recruit, female, recently arrived from capital. Name, Luna Morel. The prince set the report on his desk. He walked to the window and looked out over the sleeping city. The High Chancellor had assured him the girl would slink back to whatever forgotten hole she'd crawled out of, that the humiliation would keep her silent and invisible for the rest of her unremarkable life. Instead, she'd gone to the one place in the kingdom where people disappeared permanently. The prince's fingers drummed against the window frame. Behind him, a voice spoke from the shadows. "You're thinking about the Morel girl." Casimir didn't turn. His brother had a talent for appearing when not wanted. "I'm thinking about border security." Liar. Lord Adrian Thornblood stepped into the lamplight. He was younger than the prince by 2 years, built leaner, with the same pale eyes but a face that smiled more easily. He's also far more dangerous because of it. "She went to Thornhaven." "Why? How should I know?" "Because you're not stupid." Adrian moved to stand beside his brother at the window. A girl gets humiliated at the royal gala. Everyone expects her to vanish into obscurity. Instead, she runs to the most dangerous part of the kingdom and volunteers for work that kills experienced warriors. That's not running away. That's running toward something, or running from something. Adrian's smile was sharp. Either way, she's not behaving like a broken border girl with no prospects. She's behaving like someone with nothing left to lose. Those are the most dangerous people in the world. The prince said nothing. Adrian studied his brother's profile. If you're worried she might be what the council fears, you know what has to be done. "I'm not worried about anything." Casimir's voice was flat. "She's one girl in a settlement of 200. The border territories will solve the problem for us." "And if they don't?" The silence stretched. Finally, the prince spoke. "Then we'll solve it ourselves, but quietly. No scenes, no questions." Adrian nodded. He started toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, brother, I think you're making a mistake. The smart play is to eliminate the threat before it becomes a threat." The prince didn't answer. When Adrian was gone, Casimir remained at the window. Below, the capital slept peacefully, unaware that the careful order they'd built over 20 years was starting to crack. Because Adrian was right about one thing. Luna Morel wasn't behaving like someone broken, and that changed everything. Luna ran border patrol for 7 nights straight. Each night, they saw signs. Tracks that were too large, kill sites that were too violent, howls in the distance that made even Cade nervous. But they didn't see the massive wolf again. On the 8th night, Captain Rourke pulled Luna aside before the patrol headed out. His expression was grim. "You're holding up better than I expected." Luna didn't know what to say to that. Cade says you've got instincts, that you smell danger before it shows itself. True? Luna hesitated. I grew up border pack. You learn to read the forest, or you don't grow up at all. Rourke nodded slowly. I'm putting you on an extra rotation, double shifts for the next week. Hazard pay. Why? Because whatever's out there is testing our defenses, probing for weakness, and when it finds one, it's going to hit us hard. He held her gaze. You seem like someone who's tired of running. This is your chance to stand and fight. Luna thought about the ballroom, the laughter, the broken Luna. When do I start? Tonight. Rourke handed her a better blade than the notched short sword she'd been issued. This was real steel, balanced and sharp. You're not new blood anymore. Try not to die. The attack came 3 nights later. Luna was on the midnight patrol with Cade's squad when the howls started. Not one. Dozens. Coming from the north where the forest grew thickest. Cade's face went white. Back to the settlement. Now! They ran. Behind them, the howls multiplied. Luna risked a glance over her shoulder and saw them. Wolves. Real wolves this time, not the massive creature from before. But there were so many, 20, 30, more emerging from the trees. Rogues. A full pack. And they were hunting. The squad burst onto open ground. The settlement gates were ahead, but they'd never make it. The pack was too close. Luna felt something snap inside her chest. Not break. Snap into place, like a lock finally opening. Heat flooded her veins, her vision sharpened. The night became bright as day. Keep running. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It was deeper, colder. I'll hold them. Are you insane? Cade shouted. Luna didn't answer. She turned to face the charging pack. The rogues saw her, one lone wolf standing between them and their prey. They should have scattered, should have split to go around her. Instead, they stopped, all of them. 30 rogues skidding to a halt like they'd hit an invisible wall. Luna stood there, her borrowed blade in one hand, and felt power rolling off her in waves she couldn't name or control. Her eyes blazed gold. She knew without looking, could feel the light burning behind them. The lead rogue, a massive male with scars covering his face, took one step toward her, then another. Testing. Luna's lips pulled back from her teeth. The sound that came out of her throat was not a growl. It was something older, something that made the scarred rogue flatten his ears and tuck his tail. Leave. Her voice carried across the open ground. One word, final. The rogues looked at each other. Pack animals calculating odds. Then they turned and melted back into the forest. Just like that. Gone. Luna stood alone on the empty ground, breathing hard, her heart hammering. The gold light faded from her eyes. The heat in her veins cooled. She turned to look back at her squad. They were staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Cade spoke first. What the hell was that? Luna opened her mouth, closed it. She had no answer, because she had no idea what she'd just done, or what it meant. But deep in her bones, deeper than thought, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever she was, it was waking up. And there was no putting it back to sleep. Behind the settlement walls, Captain Rourke watched from the gate tower. His face was pale. His hands gripped the railing hard enough to make his knuckles white. He'd seen what Luna Morell just did. Seen 30 rogues turn and flee from one unarmed girl. He knew what that meant, knew what she had to be. And he knew he had to send word to the capital immediately, before whatever was waking up inside that girl burned the entire kingdom to ash. Captain Rourke didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office with a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a blank piece of parchment that stayed blank for 3 hours. The words wouldn't come because once he wrote them, once he sealed that letter and sent it to the capital, he'd be signing Luna Morell's death warrant. He'd seen what happened to wolves like her, wolves with power they shouldn't have, power that scared the people who ruled from golden thrones and marble halls. They disappeared, quietly, efficiently. No trials, no questions, just gone. Rourke poured another drink. His hand shook. He'd fought in the northern campaigns, had killed rogues and traitors and enemy combatants without losing sleep. But this felt different. This felt like murder. The door opened without a knock. Cade stepped in, her metal arm catching the lamplight. She looked at the blank parchment, then at Rourke's face. You're going to report her. It wasn't a question. Rourke set down his glass. I don't have a choice. You saw what she did. 30 rogues turned and ran from one girl. That's not normal pack dominance. That's something else. So we let the Capitol execute her for being different, for being dangerous. Rourke's voice went hard. You know what the old bloodlines were capable of, what they did before the purge. That kind of power in the wrong hands burns kingdoms to the ground. Cade was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and placed her metal hand flat on the blank parchment. Her single eye was cold as winter stone. That girl saved my squad tonight, saved this entire settlement, and you're going to repay her by sending assassins? I'm going to protect 200 people from something they can't fight. By sacrificing one? Yes. The word came out harder than Rourke intended, because that's what command means. Making the choice that keeps the most people alive, even when it feels like cutting out your own heart. Cade studied him for a long time. Finally, she lifted her hand from the parchment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and more dangerous because of it. Write your letter, Captain. Send your report. But know this. If they come for her, I won't stand aside. I don't care what bloodline she carries or what power burns in her veins. She's one of mine now, and I protect what's mine. She turned and walked out. Rourke sat alone with his whiskey and his blank parchment. Outside, dawn was starting to break over the stockade walls. Another day in the border territories. Another day pretending the world wasn't tearing itself apart. He picked up his pen, started to write, stopped. The parchment stayed blank until noon. Luna woke to someone pounding on her door. She rolled out of the narrow bed in the boarding house, grabbed the blade she now kept beside her pillow, and yanked the door open ready to fight. Cade stood in the hallway. Her face was grim. Get dressed. We need to talk. Luna pulled on boots and a shirt, strapped the blade to her hip. 5 minutes later, they were walking through the settlement as the midday crowd went about their business. Nobody looked at them twice. Border territories had a way of minding their own problems and ignoring everyone else's. Cade led her to the northern wall, away from the gates and guard posts, where they could see over the stockade into the wild lands beyond. The forest stretched endlessly, green and dark and full of things that wanted you dead. Cade didn't waste time. Last night shouldn't have been possible. Rogues don't retreat from a single wolf, not when they outnumber you 30-1. Not when they're hungry and you're between them and prey. Luna's jaw tightened. I don't know what happened. Don't lie to me. Cade's voice was flat. I've been running Border Patrol for 8 years. I've seen things that would make Capitol wolves piss themselves. But I've never seen anything like what you did. Those rogues didn't just retreat. They submitted. To you. I didn't ask them to. Doesn't matter. What matters is that power like that doesn't come from nowhere. It's inherited. Bloodline. And bloodlines that strong have a history, usually a violent one. Luna stared out at the forest. Her hands gripped the wall hard enough to hurt. I don't know anything about my bloodline. My mother died when I was young. My grandmother never talked about our family beyond her own mother. We were just border pack. Unremarkable. Someone lied to you then. Cade leaned against the wall, her metal arm resting on the wooden beam. Because what you did last night is what the old wolf lords could do before the purge. Command lesser wolves through sheer presence. Bend them to your will without touching them. What purge? 20 years ago. Before you were born. The royal family and the great clans hunted down every remaining member of the ancient bloodlines. Said they were too dangerous to let live. Too powerful. That their existence threatened the stability of the kingdom. Luna felt ice spreading through her chest. They killed them all? Everyone they could find. Men, women, children, entire family lines erased in a single season. Cade's expression was unreadable. The official story is that the old bloodlines were planning a coup, that they wanted to overthrow the throne and return to the chaos of the blood wars. And the unofficial story? That the royal family was terrified of anyone who could challenge their power. So they eliminated the competition and called it justice. The ice in Luna's chest turned to something hotter, angrier. If they killed everyone, then I can't be what you think I am. Unless someone survived. Cade met her eye. Unless someone escaped the purge and hid, changed their name, disappeared into the border territories where nobody asks questions and records don't exist. You think that's what my family did. I think it's the only explanation that makes sense. And I think Captain Rourke figured it out the same moment I did, which means he's probably writing a report to the Capitol right now. Luna's hand went to the blade at her hip. Will they come for me? Depends on what Rourke writes. If he describes what happened without naming you, they might send investigators. If he names you specifically, they'll send something worse. What's worse than investigators? Cleaners. The kind of wolves who specialize in making problems disappear permanently. Luna's throat was dry. How long do I have? Cade shrugged. Courier to the Capitol is 3 days. Response time depends on how seriously they take the threat. Could be a week. Could be 2. So I run. You could. Cade's voice was neutral. Take a horse tonight. Head deeper into the wildlands. They'd never find you out there. But running means spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Sleeping light. Never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. That's not living. That's just dying slowly. Luna stared at the forest. Somewhere out there, the massive wolf was still hunting. The thing that had killed the elk and scattered her patrol. The thing that shouldn't exist this deep in Kingdom territory. What's the other option? Cade's metal fingers drummed against the wall. You stay. You learn to control whatever's waking up inside you. You become strong enough that when they come for you, you're ready. And if I can't control it, then we're all dead anyway. But at least you'll die fighting instead of running. Luna closed her eyes. She could still hear the ballroom laughter, could still see Prince Casimir's cold eyes as he told her to go home. The broken Luna. That's what they'd called her. What they'd tried to make her. She opened her eyes. Teach me. Cade's expression might have been a smile, might have been something sadder. Meet me at the old quarry after sunset, and bring that blade. You're going to need it. Bossers. The old quarry was a scar in the hills north of the settlement. Decades ago, workers had carved stone from the earth to build Thornhaven's walls. Now it was just a deep pit surrounded by rock faces and scrub pine. Nobody came here anymore. The footing was bad, and the shadows held too many memories of workers who'd fallen and never gotten back up. Perfect for the kind of training you didn't want witnesses to see. Luna arrived as the sun touched the western hills. Cade was already there, standing in the center of the quarry floor. She'd removed her patrol leathers and wore only a sleeveless shirt that showed the scarring where her real arm had been severed and the prosthetic attached. Cade looked up when Luna descended into the pit. No greeting, just a long, measuring stare. What do you know about pack dynamics? Luna stopped 20 feet away. The dominant wolf leads. The others follow. Challenge the dominant and either win your place or submit. That's the simple version. Cade started to circle. Her movements were fluid despite the prosthetic. The real version is more complex. Pack hierarchy isn't just about physical strength. It's about will, presence. The ability to project dominance so complete that others submit without a fight ever happening. Like what I did to the rogues. Exactly. But you did it on instinct, probably scared out of your mind. Adrenaline and survival instinct forcing that power to the surface. Cade stopped circling. Now you need to learn to do it on purpose. When you're calm, when you're in control. How? The old way. Cade's smile was sharp. You try to dominate me. I resist. We see what happens. You want me to attack you? I want you to command me. Make me submit. Not with your fists or your blade, with what you are. With the power that made 30 rogues turn tail and run. Luna's heart started hammering. I don't know how. Then you'd better figure it out, because I'm not going to make this easy. Cade's eyes flashed amber. Her presence suddenly filled the quarry like water filling a basin. Luna felt it pressing against her, testing her. Cade wasn't just a sergeant with a prosthetic arm. She was a dominant wolf who'd earned her rank through blood and survival. And right now, she was challenging Luna to prove she was stronger. Luna's hands clenched. She reached for the feeling from last night, the heat in her veins, the snap of power sliding into place. Nothing happened, just her standing in a quarry while Cade's dominance pressed harder. Try harder. Cade's voice was cold. Unless you want to die when the Capitol sends killers who'll be far less patient than me. Luna gritted her teeth. Reach deeper. The heat was there, buried under layers of fear and confusion and a lifetime of being told she was nothing special. She pulled at it, tried to drag it to the surface. It wouldn't come. Cade moved, fast. One moment she was 20 feet away, the next she was in Luna's face, her metal hand wrapped around Luna's throat, lifting her onto her toes. Cade's amber eyes were inches away. This is what they'll do. Press until you break or submit, and if you submit, you die. She squeezed just enough to make breathing hard. So stop reaching politely for your power and take it. Luna's vision started to tunnel. Her hands came up, grabbed Cade's prosthetic arm. The metal was cold, unyielding. Something inside Luna's chest cracked, not broke, cracked open. Heat flooded out like water from a broken dam. Luna's eyes blazed gold. The power that had scared the rogue surged through her veins, but this time she felt it, understood it, could shape it. She met Cade's amber eyes with her own burning gold. Submit. The word came out as a command that bypassed speech and went straight to the animal brain that all wolves carried, the part that understood pack law older than language. Cade's fingers spasmed. Released. She staggered back 3 steps, her expression shocked, her head automatically tilting to expose her throat in the universal sign of submission. Then she caught herself, straightened. The submission reflex faded but didn't disappear entirely. Cade's laugh was breathless. There it is. That's what you are. Luna stood in the center of the quarry, breathing hard, the gold light slowly fading from her eyes. I felt it this time, felt it respond. Good. Because that's the foundation of everything I'm going to teach you. Cade rolled her shoulders, shaking off the last of the compulsion. Your power isn't something separate from you. It's not a tool you pick up and put down. It's what you are. And what you are is a wolf that other wolves instinctively recognize as above them in the hierarchy. Luna's hands were shaking, the old bloodlines. This is what they could do. Among other things, the strongest could command entire packs, could force submission from wolves they'd never met. Some stories say the most powerful could even compel humans. Cade's expression went dark. That's why the royal family killed them. Imagine an army that obeys your every command without question. Soldiers who would die for you not out of loyalty but because you ordered it and they physically couldn't refuse. That's slavery. That's power. And power that absolute terrifies the people who want to rule, so they eliminated it. Luna looked at her hands. They'd stopped shaking, but she could still feel the heat beneath her skin. Waiting. I don't want to be what they killed. Too late for that. Cade's voice was matter of fact. You are what you are. Choice you have to make is how you use it, and whether you'll be strong enough to survive what's coming. They trained until full dark. Cade pushed Luna through exercises designed to bring the power to the surface, to make it respond to will instead of desperation. By the end, Luna could make the gold light flare in her eyes on command, could project enough dominance to make Cade take a step back even when expecting it. It wasn't mastery, but it was a start. As they climbed out of the quarry, Cade stopped. One more thing. Don't tell anyone what we're doing. Not Rourke, not the squad, nobody. Why not? Because the moment people know you can force their submission, they stop seeing you as a person. They see you as a weapon or a threat. Either way, you lose the ability to have allies. You just have people waiting for a chance to put you down before you can use your power against them. Luna nodded slowly. The settlement looked small and vulnerable from up here. 200 people behind wooden walls, pretending they were safe in a world full of things that wanted them dead. She was supposed to protect them, but how could she protect anyone when just existing made her a target? Cade seemed to read her thoughts. One day at a time. Master your power. Survive. Everything else is noise. They walked back to Thornhaven in silence. Neither of them saw the figure watching from the tree line. A man in a dark cloak, his face hidden by shadow, his eyes tracking Luna's every movement. He'd been watching for 3 days now, waiting for confirmation. And what he'd just witnessed in the quarry was all the confirmation he needed. The figure melted back into the forest. By dawn, he'd be 50 miles away, riding hard for the capital with information that would change everything. The girl was exactly what they'd feared, and she was awakening faster than anyone had predicted. Yeah. In the capital, Prince Casimir received 2 reports within an hour of each other. The first was from Captain Rourke. It was careful, diplomatic. It described unusual rogue activity near Thornhaven and mentioned a new patrol member showing exceptional instincts but stopped short of accusations or alarm. The second report was from a source Casimir trusted far more than border captains. A man who'd been tracking the last remnants of the old bloodlines for 2 decades. A man who didn't waste words or soften truth. The report was 3 sentences long. The Morel girl is Dreamwalker bloodline. Active manifestation confirmed. Recommend immediate termination. Casimir read it twice. Then he burned it in the fireplace and watched the parchment curl into ash. His brother Adrian walked in without knocking. He had a talent for appearing at the worst moments. "You look troubled, brother." Casimir didn't turn from the fire. "Border security issues. Must be serious issues to put that expression on your face." Adrian poured himself wine from the decanter on the side table. "This wouldn't have anything to do with the broken Luna, would it?" "Don't call her that." "Why not? Everyone else does." Adrian's smile was sharp. "She's become quite the legend, the girl who thought she could be queen and left the gala in tears. Ballads are being written." Casimir's jaw tightened. "She's nobody, a border girl who misread dreams and paid the price in humiliation. Then why are you burning intelligence reports about her?" Casimir turned. His brother stood by the window, wineglass in hand, expression too knowing. Adrian had always been observant. It was what made him dangerous. "You're having her watched. I'm having the border territories watched. That she's there is simply interesting timing." Adrian took a sip of wine. "What does the report say?" "Nothing that concerns you." "So she is what we suspected." Adrian set down his glass. "The old bloodlines didn't die out. They just went underground. And now one of them walked right into our ballroom and we let her leave alive. Because there was no proof, no evidence, just suspicions and paranoia. And now? Now there's evidence." Casimir's voice was flat. "Which means we have a choice to make. Not much of a choice." Adrian's expression hardened. "We eliminated the old bloodlines for a reason. They're too dangerous to let live. Send the cleaners. End this before it becomes a problem we can't control. She's one girl in a border settlement, barely trained, barely aware of what she is. One girl with the power to command wolves like they're puppets." Adrian stepped closer. "You know the histories. You know what the Dreamwalker bloodline could do at full strength. They didn't just dominate wolves, they dominated everything. Armies, nobles, kings. That was centuries ago. And yet here she is, manifesting powers that shouldn't exist anymore, powers that could unravel everything we've built." Adrian's voice went cold. "You want to risk the kingdom on hope that she'll never realize her full potential?" Casimir stared at the ashes in the fireplace. His brother was right. Every strategic calculation said the same thing. Eliminate the threat. Maintain stability. Protect the realm. But he kept seeing her face in the ballroom, the humiliation, the way she'd held herself together until she couldn't anymore. The broken Luna. They'd destroyed her publicly to make sure she'd never be a threat. And she'd responded by running straight into the most dangerous territory in the kingdom. That wasn't the action of someone broken. That was the action of someone who refused to stay down. "I'll handle it." Casimir's voice was quiet. "Handle it how?" "My way. Without your interference." Adrian studied his brother for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You have 1 week. After that, the decision gets made for you. The council has eyes everywhere. Once they know what she is, they'll act, and you won't be able to stop them." He left. The door closed softly behind him. Casimir stood alone in his chambers. Outside, the capital continued its endless dance of politics and power. Nobody knew that a girl in the border territories might bring all of it crashing down. He walked to his desk, pulled out a piece of parchment, started to write orders that would set events in motion he couldn't take back. Then he stopped, set down the pen, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his decision was made. He wouldn't send cleaners. Not yet. He'd go himself. Luna ran patrol every night for the next week. During the days, she trained with Cade in the quarry. The power came easier each time. She learned to bring the gold light to her eyes without fear or adrenaline. Learned to project dominance in controlled waves instead of explosive bursts. Learned to read the invisible currents of pack hierarchy that flowed between wolves. But she also learned the cost. Each time she used the power, something inside her changed, hardened. The part of her that wanted connection and belonging got buried deeper under the part that understood only strength and survival. Cade noticed, watched her with that single eye that saw too much. You're losing something. Cade said it on the 8th day as they stood in the quarry after a brutal training session. The soft parts. The parts that make you human instead of just predator. Luna wiped blood from her lip where she'd bitten through it, holding back a scream. Good. Soft parts get you killed. They also keep you sane. Cade's voice was quiet. I've seen wolves go too deep into their power, lose themselves in the dominance and hierarchy until there's nothing left but the animal. They stop being people who can shift into wolves. They become wolves wearing human skin. Is that what happened to the old bloodlines? Some of them. The ones who didn't get killed in the purge ate themselves alive from the inside. Power without humanity is just monstrosity. Luna looked at her hands. They were scarred now, calloused, the hands of someone who'd stopped being a girl from a border pack and become something else. Something harder. I'll risk it. Because the alternative is dying soft and broken in some ditch, while the people who laughed at me sleep safely in their palaces. Cade didn't argue, just nodded. Then let's make sure you're strong enough that when they come, they're the ones who die. They trained harder. Okay. The attack came on the 10th night, not rogues this time, something worse. Luna was on patrol with Cade's squad when they found the bodies. 3 settlement hunters who'd gone out that morning and never returned. They were arranged in a clearing like pieces on a game board. Throats cut, eyes open. The kill was hours old, but the bodies were still warm. That's not rogue work. Torin's voice was tight. That's execution. Cade knelt beside one of the bodies. Professional, clean cuts, single stroke. She looked up at Luna. Someone trained did this. Who would execute hunters? Before Cade could answer, a voice spoke from the trees. Someone sent to deliver a message. The squad spun, weapons drawn. A man stepped out of the shadows. He wore dark leathers and no visible weapons, but Luna's instincts screamed danger. His face was scarred. His eyes were flat and dead. Behind him, 4 more figures emerged from the forest. All armed. All moving with the controlled grace of trained killers. Cade's hand went to her blade. State your business. The scarred man smiled. It wasn't pleasant. I'm looking for Luna Morel, heard she's running border patrol these days. Luna's heart tried to punch through her ribs. Who's asking? Someone who has questions about your bloodline. The man's eyes fixed on her. About what you can do. What you are. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me. The man took a step forward. The squad's weapons tracked him, but nobody moved to engage. We've been watching you, saw what you did to those rogues, saw what you've been practicing in the quarry. Your Dreamwalker bloodline, last of your line, and my employers would very much like you to stop existing. Luna felt the heat rising in her veins, the gold light wanting to break free. Your employers can go to hell. The man's smile widened. Probably. But first, we finish this job. Nothing personal, just good business. He moved, fast, inhumanly fast. One moment he was 10 feet away, the next he was on top of Luna, a blade appearing in his hand from nowhere, driving toward her throat. Luna's power exploded outward. Gold light blazed from her eyes. The command ripped from her throat without conscious thought. Stop. The man froze mid-strike. His blade stopped an inch from Luna's neck. His entire body went rigid, locked in place by a compulsion so absolute his muscles quivered with the effort of fighting it. Behind him, his 4 companions stumbled. 2 dropped their weapons. 1 fell to his knees. Only 1 managed to stay standing, but his eyes showed white all around like a panicked horse. Luna stood frozen, staring at the blade that should have killed her. The man holding it was shaking. Sweat poured down his face. Every part of him fought to complete the strike. But he couldn't move. Cade's voice cut through the tension. Luna, end this. Luna met the man's eyes. They were still flat, still dead. Even with her power holding him paralyzed, there was no fear there. Just calculation. She understood in that moment. This man had been sent to kill her. Wouldn't stop unless she stopped him permanently. The realization should have horrified her, should have made her hesitate. It didn't. Luna's power shifted, became something darker. The command changed from stop to something more final. Die. The man's eyes went wide. For the first time, Luna saw fear there, real terror as his body began to obey. His heart started to slow, his lungs forgot how to pull air. He fell to his knees. The blade dropped from nerveless fingers. Cade grabbed Luna's shoulder. Enough. You don't want to do this. Luna's eyes still blazed gold. Why not? He was sent to kill me. Because if you do this, you become exactly what they fear, what they think justifies hunting your bloodline to extinction. Cade's metal hand tightened. This is the line you don't cross. Trust me. Luna held the man's life in her will for 3 more seconds. Could feel how easy it would be to just squeeze a little harder, to stop his heart completely. She released him. The man collapsed face first in the dirt, gasping, his body remembering how to live. His companions had already fled. Luna could hear them crashing through the forest, running like the rogues had run. The scarred man looked up at her from the ground. His face was white. His dead eyes were wide and shocked. What are you? Luna's voice was cold. Someone you failed to kill. Go back to whoever sent you. Tell them what happened here. Tell them if they send anyone else, I won't show mercy a second time. The man scrambled to his feet, staggered, nearly fell. Then he turned and ran, leaving his blade behind in the dirt. Silence filled the clearing. The only sound was Luna's harsh breathing and the hammering of her heart. She'd just used her power to kill, almost killed. Would have killed if Cade hadn't stopped her. And the worst part was how easy it had been. How natural. Cade's voice was quiet. We need to leave. Now. Those bodies weren't random. They were bait to draw us out. And those killers knew exactly who you were and where to find you. Luna looked at the hunters' corpses. 3 people dead because someone wanted her dead. Because of blood she hadn't chosen. Power she hadn't asked for. The broken Luna. That girl died in the royal ballroom. The woman standing in this clearing covered in someone else's blood was someone different entirely. And there was no going back. They made it back to Thornhaven just before dawn. Captain Rourke was waiting at the gates. His face was grim. My office. Now. He didn't wait for response, just turned and walked toward the command building. Luna followed. Cade came too, uninvited, daring Rourke to order her out. Inside, Rourke closed the door, locked it. Then he turned to face them. I got confirmation this morning. The Capitol received my report. They're sending someone. The cleaners? Cade's voice was flat. Worse, Rourke's expression was pained. They're sending the prince himself. Prince Casimir Thornblood is coming to Thornhaven, and I don't think it's a social visit. Luna felt ice spread through her chest. When? He left the capital yesterday. Rode ahead of his escort. Small group, fast travel. He'll be here tomorrow night at the latest. Why would the future king come personally? Cade demanded. Because she's not just another border threat. Rourke looked at Luna. You're a political problem. Killing you quietly is one thing. But if anyone found out the royal family murdered someone with old bloodline power without proof of wrongdoing, it could spark challenges to their legitimacy. Better to have the prince assess you personally. Decide your fate face to face. So he's coming to kill me himself. Or to decide if you need killing. Rourke's voice was careful. Either way, you have maybe 30 hours to decide what you're going to do. Luna's mind raced. She could run, take a horse and disappear into the wildlands. But Cade was right about running. That was just slow death. She could fight, use her power to dominate the prince when he arrived. Force him to leave her alone. But that would prove every fear about her bloodline. Would give them justification to hunt her forever. Or she could face him. Let him judge her. Trust that somehow, some way, she could prove she wasn't a threat. That last option felt like walking blindfolded off a cliff. But the other options weren't really options at all. I'll stay. Luna's voice was steady. I'll meet with him. Answer his questions. Maybe if he sees I'm not planning to raise an army or overthrow the kingdom, he'll leave me alone. Cade snorted. You think it's that simple? No. But I think it's the only chance I have. Luna met Rourke's eyes. I'm not running. Not from him. Not from anyone. I spent my whole life being afraid, being small, being nothing. I'm done with that. Rourke studied her for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. I'll arrange the meeting, neutral ground, witnesses, give you the best chance I can. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Rourke's expression was bleak. Prince Casimir doesn't make social calls to border settlements. If he's coming this far personally, it's because the threat is serious. And serious threats get eliminated, not negotiated with. Then I'll have to convince him I'm worth keeping alive. Luna turned toward the door. Cade followed her out. In the hallway, she grabbed Luna's arm. You're walking into an execution. You know that, right? Maybe. Luna met her eye. But I'd rather die standing in front of him than spend the rest of my life running from shadows. Cade's metal fingers tightened. Then we make sure you don't die at all. One more training session. Tonight. Everything I know. Everything that might keep you alive tomorrow. Luna nodded. They both knew it probably wouldn't be enough. But it was all they had. Ah, shut. Prince Casimir rode through the night. He'd left his escort hours behind, taking only 3 royal guards who could keep pace. The fastest route to Thornhaven cut through wildlands where rogues hunted and the kingdom's law meant nothing. He didn't care. Speed mattered more than safety right now. His captain of the guard rode beside him. A woman named Severn, who'd saved his life twice and never asked questions about orders that made other soldiers hesitate. You're sure about this, my lord? Going alone into border territory? I'm not alone. I have you 3. I meant without the full escort, without backup. If this girl is what the reports claim, we might need more swords. Casimir's jaw tightened. If she's what the reports claim, more swords won't help. Either she submits to royal authority or she proves herself a threat that needs elimination. Either way, I need to see her myself before making that decision. And if she attacks, then you put her down. But I want the chance to speak with her first. They rode in silence for a while. The forest pressed close on both sides. Eyes watched from the darkness. Things that might be wolves or might be worse tracked their passage. Severn spoke again. Permission to speak freely, my lord? Granted. You could have sent the cleaners. Quick, efficient, no risk to yourself. Why come personally? Because I'm tired of making decisions about people's lives based on reports and rumors and my brother's paranoia. Casimir stared straight ahead. She walked into my ballroom, stood in front of me, and I humiliated her because it was politically convenient, because I was told her bloodline made her dangerous. And now she's proven dangerous. Has she? She defended a settlement from rogues, survived an assassination attempt, hasn't hurt anyone except people who tried to kill her first. That's survival, not aggression. You're defending her. Severn's voice was neutral but carried an edge. I'm being fair. There's a difference. Fairness is a luxury kings can't afford. Then it's good I'm not king yet. Casimir urged his horse faster. The sooner they reached Thornhaven, the sooner he could end this. One way or another. Behind them, unseen in the forest shadows, the massive wolf followed. It had been tracking the prince's group since they entered border territory. Watching. Waiting for something. The creature's eyes glowed the same impossible gold as Luna's, and somewhere in its animal mind, it recognized what was about to happen in Thornhaven. Recognized that the meeting between the prince and the girl would change everything. That there would be no going back after tomorrow. For any of them. Prince Casimir Thornblood reached Thornhaven an hour after sunset. The settlement looked smaller than he'd expected, more vulnerable. A wooden stockade trying to hold back a wilderness that wanted everything inside it dead. The guards at the gate didn't recognize him at first. Hard to blame them. He'd left the royal regalia behind and rode in plain leathers marked only by the quality of the steel at his hip. Then one of the older guards looked closer, saw something in Casimir's face that made him stumble back and nearly drop his spear. Your Highness, the words came out strangled. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Plans changed. Casimir dismounted. His 3 guards did the same. Where's Captain Rourke? In the command building, Your Highness. I can send... No need. I know the way. He left his horse with the stammering guards and walked into the settlement. Behind him, Captain Severn kept pace, her hand never far from her blade. The settlement went quiet as they passed. People emerged from doorways, staring, whispering. A prince hadn't visited border territory in living memory. His presence here meant something terrible was happening or about to happen. They were right to be afraid. Rourke met them at the command building door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He bowed stiffly. Your Highness, we've prepared quarters for you and your guard. If you'd like to rest before... I'm not here to rest. Where is she? Rourke's jaw tightened. The Broken Antler Tavern. I can bring her to you, or we can arrange a more formal... Take me to her. Now, something flickered across Rourke's face. Respect, maybe, or concern. He nodded and led them through the settlement streets. The tavern was louder than the rest of Thornhaven. Voices and rough laughter spilled through the windows, the kind of noise people made when they were trying to forget the things hunting them in the dark. Inside, the common room fell silent the moment Casimir entered. 30 faces turned toward him, hardened faces that had seen violence and expected more. For a moment, the only sound was the crackling fire in the hearth. Then a woman built like a boulder stepped forward. The barkeep. Her eyes were wary but not afraid. "We don't want trouble." "Then you won't get any." Casimir's voice was level. "I'm looking for Luna Mirel." The barkeep's expression didn't change. "Don't know anyone by that name." Liar. But a loyal one. Casimir could respect that. "I'm not here to harm her. I need to speak with her. That's all." A door at the back of the tavern opened. Luna stepped through. Casimir had seen her only once before, in the royal ballroom under blazing lights, while hundreds watched. She'd looked small then, fragile, a girl wearing borrowed finery and desperate hope. The woman who stood before him now was different, harder. She wore border patrol leathers and a blade at her hip like she knew how to use it. Her dark hair was pulled back. Her face was leaner, carved down by weeks of survival, but her eyes were the same, dark and defiant and burning with something that hadn't been there in the ballroom. "Your Highness?" Her voice was steady. "I'm Luna Mirel." Casimir studied her. Behind her, another woman emerged from the back room, older, scarred, a metal prosthetic where her left arm should be. She positioned herself slightly in front of Luna, protective without making it obvious. "I need to speak with you. Alone. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Sergeant Cade." Luna's chin lifted. "She's earned that right." Casimir considered, then nodded. "Fine. But not here. Somewhere private. The old quarry." Cade's voice was rough. "North of the settlement. Nobody goes there anymore. Lead the way." The quarry was a wound in the earth. Dark. Isolated. The kind of place where bodies disappeared and questions went unasked. Casimir's guard captain didn't like it. Her hand stayed on her blade as they descended into the pit. Luna stood in the center of the quarry floor. Cade was beside her. Both of them looked ready to fight or die. Maybe both. Casimir stopped 20 feet away. His guards fanned out behind him, creating a semicircle of drawn steel in hostile intent. "I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them honestly." Luna's expression didn't change. "And if I don't? Then we'll have a different conversation. The kind that ends with blood on stone." "Sounds like you've already decided how this ends. Why bother with questions?" "Because I want to be wrong." Casimir's voice was flat. "I want you to tell me the reports are mistaken, that you're not what I think you are, that letting you live won't be the mistake that cost my kingdom everything." Luna's laugh was bitter. "You humiliated me in front of your entire court, made me a joke. The broken Luna, remember? And now you're afraid I might be too strong for you to control. That's what this is really about. What you are makes you dangerous. What you could become makes you a threat to every wolf in this kingdom. I didn't choose what I am. I didn't ask for this power. Nobody ever does. But you have it anyway. And power like yours doesn't stay contained. It grows, spreads. Eventually it demands to be used. And when it is, people die." Luna's hands clenched at her sides. "You killed my bloodline. Hunted them down like animals. Women, children, people who'd never threatened anyone. And you call us dangerous? They were planning a coup. They were existing. And that was enough to terrify you." Luna took a step forward. Cade moved with her, protective. "Because you understood that all your armies and castles and claims to divine right meant nothing against someone who could command loyalty with a word, someone who could make your own soldiers kneel without ever drawing a blade." Casimir's expression hardened. "Prove me wrong, then. Show me you can control your power, that you won't use it to dominate and destroy. How? By letting you kill me? By proving I'm harmless by dying quietly? By submitting. Acknowledge royal authority, swear fealty. Let me bind your power under kingdom law, so I can be your weapon instead? Your pet monster on a leash? So you can live." Casimir's voice went cold. "Because those are your options, submit or die. There's no third choice." Luna stared at him. Her eyes were dark and burning. For a moment, Casimir thought she might attack, might call up that terrible power the reports described, and try to force him to his knees. Instead, she spoke quietly. You're afraid, not of what I am, of what I make you, because if I can exist outside your control, then everything you believe about power and authority is a lie. The throne doesn't give you strength. It's just a chair. And standing here, facing me, you know it. The words hit harder than any physical blow, because she was right. Casimir had spent his entire life believing the throne made him different, special, above other wolves. But Luna Morel, with her tattered leathers and scarred hands, possessed something he couldn't claim or control or take by force, and it terrified him. Behind him, Captain Severn shifted. Your Highness, give the word! Luna's eyes flicked to the guard captain, then back to Casimir. You came all this way to execute me yourself. At least have the courage to admit it. Casimir opened his mouth to respond. The howl cut through the night like a blade through silk. Everyone froze. The sound came from the north, deep, massive, wrong. That's not rogues, Cade's voice was tight. That's the thing from before, the one that killed the elk, the massive wolf. Casimir had read the reports, dismissed them as exaggeration. Border guards seeing shadows and calling them monsters. The howl came again. Closer. Your Highness? Severn's hand was on her blade. We need to get you back to the settlement. No! Luna was staring toward the sound. Her whole body had gone rigid. That thing has been hunting near Thornhaven for weeks. If it's coming now, it's coming for a reason. What reason? Casimir demanded. Luna met his eyes. Her expression was strange, fearful and wondering at the same time. Me. I think it's coming for me. Before anyone could respond, the massive wolf burst from the tree line. It was bigger than the reports claimed. Its shoulder would have reached Casimir's chest. Its coat was silver black, shimmering in the moonlight like water over stone, and its eyes blazed gold. The same impossible gold Casimir had seen in the intelligence reports about Luna's power. The creature stopped at the edge of the quarry. Its head swung back and forth, taking in the assembled wolves. When its gaze settled on Luna, it went still. Luna took a step forward. Cade grabbed her arm, but she shook free. The massive wolf's eyes tracked her movement. What are you doing? Casimir's voice was sharp. Something stupid. Luna's voice was distant. Or maybe the only thing that makes sense. She walked toward the creature. Every instinct Casimir possessed screamed at him to stop her, to order Severn to put an arrow in the beast before it could tear Luna apart. He didn't. Something held him frozen. Some recognition that this moment was important in ways he didn't understand. Luna stopped 10 feet from the massive wolf. They stared at each other, girl and beast, predator and prey, or maybe something else entirely. Luna's voice was barely a whisper. I know you. The wolf's ears came forward. A low sound rumbled from its chest. Not a growl, something more complex. Luna closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were blazing gold. The same gold as the wolf's eyes. The same power that had made rogues flee and assassins fail. She spoke a single word, a name that felt ancient and familiar and wrong all at once. Father. The world stopped. The massive wolf shifted. Not the way normal wolves shifted, slow and controlled. This was violent, bones cracking and reforming, muscle tearing and rebuilding. The sound was horrible, wet and grinding and wrong. When it finished, a man stood where the wolf had been. He was tall, broad-shouldered. His hair was silver black like the wolf's coat. Scars covered his body in patterns that suggested decades of violence, and his eyes were the same burning gold. He looked at Luna with an expression that was half wonder, half agony. Hello, little moon. His voice was rough from disuse. You've grown strong. Luna was shaking. You're dead. They killed you. The purge took everyone, not everyone. The man's smile was terrible. They tried. Hunted us through the mountains for months. Killed your mother, your grandmother, everyone who shared our blood. But I survived. Barely. And I've been hiding in the wildlands ever since, waiting. For what? For you to manifest. For your power to wake up. The man took a step forward. His movements were predator smooth. I've been watching you for weeks. Saw what you did to those rogues. Saw you training in this quarry. You're ready now." "Ready for what?" Luna's voice was breaking. "To take back what they stole from us." The man's eyes blazed brighter. "To make them pay for every member of our family they murdered. To show them why they were right to fear the Dreamwalker bloodline." Casimir's hand went to his blade. Behind him, Severn and the other guards drew steel. But the man didn't even look at them. His entire focus was on Luna. "You think the prince came here to talk? To be fair? He came to kill you, daughter, just like he killed all the others." The man's voice was poison sweet. "But together, you and I are strong enough to stop him, strong enough to make him kneel, strong enough to take the throne and rebuild our family's legacy in blood and fire." Luna stood frozen. Casimir could see the war happening behind her eyes. The girl who'd come to the royal gala looking for acceptance, warring with the woman who'd survived assassination attempts and border patrol and her own awakening power. "Don't listen to him." Casimir's voice cut through the tension. "He's trying to manipulate you, use your anger against me to turn you into a weapon, and you're trying to kill me." Luna's voice was hollow. "So what's the difference?" "The difference is I'm trying to protect my kingdom. He just wants revenge, no matter who dies in the process." The man laughed. It was a dark sound. Protect his kingdom? His family murdered ours to protect their throne, slaughtered children in their beds because we were born with power they couldn't control. And now he stands here pretending to be righteous? He turned to Luna. His golden eyes burned into hers. "You have a choice, daughter. Submit to the people who destroyed our family and spend the rest of your life as a leashed weapon. Or stand with me. Embrace what you are. Make them pay for every drop of blood they spilled." Luna looked at Casimir, then at her father, then at the guards with their drawn blades and hostile eyes. Casimir saw the moment she made her choice, saw it in the way her shoulders straightened, the way her hands unclenched, the way her eyes went from dark to burning gold. "No." The word was quiet. Final. Luna's father frowned. "No what?" "I won't be your weapon any more than I'll be his." Luna's voice was steady now. "You want me to help you burn the kingdom down, to kill everyone who was involved in the purge, to become exactly what they feared we were. We were innocent. They murdered us anyway. We deserve justice. You want revenge." Luna's eyes blazed brighter. "And you're willing to sacrifice anything to get it, including me. You don't care if I survive this. You just want to hurt them before you die." The man's expression hardened. "I'm offering you power, legacy, everything they tried to take from us. You're offering me death, just slower and bloodier than his." Luna looked at Casimir again. Her face was terrible, beautiful and terrible. "You were both right. I am dangerous. My bloodline, my power, what I could become, all of it. But you were also both wrong, because I'm not your weapon or his legacy or anyone's tool." "Then what are you?" Her father's voice had gone cold. Luna's power exploded outward, not directed at anyone, just raw dominance flooding the quarry like a physical force. Every wolf present felt it. The command to kneel, to submit, to recognize the presence of something above them in the hierarchy that wolves had followed since the first shift. Casimir's knees tried to buckle. He locked them through sheer will. Beside him, Severn gasped. One of the other guards actually went down. Luna's voice was terrible. "I'm the last Dreamwalker, the thing you're all afraid of, and I choose neither of you." Her father's eyes went wide. "Luna, don't—" Too late. Luna's power focused, became surgical. She looked at Casimir. "You came here to judge if I was dangerous enough to kill. Here's your answer." The compulsion hit Casimir like a fist to the chest. His body went rigid, every muscle locked. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. All he could do was stand there while Luna Morel decided if he lived or died. She held him frozen for 10 seconds that felt like eternity. Then she released him. Casimir staggered. Severn lunged forward, but he waved her back. Luna turned to her father. "And you want me to become a monster to punish monsters, to burn the kingdom until nothing's left but ash and our family's revenge? Here's my answer to that." The same compulsion focused on her father with surgical precision. The man went rigid. His golden eyes blazed with fury and something else. Something that might have been pride. "You're stronger than I expected." His voice was strained. "Good. You'll need that strength for what's coming." Luna's expression was anguished. I know what you lost, what they took from us. But becoming what you want me to be won't bring them back. It'll just create more orphans, more people who lost everything, more monsters. So you'll do nothing? Let them win? I'll survive. Luna's voice cracked. That's all I can do. Survive and try not to become the thing everyone's afraid of. She released her father. He stood there breathing hard, looking at her with an expression Casimir couldn't read. Then the man shifted. Not back to wolf form. Something else. Something in between. His body elongated. Fur erupted across his skin. His face became a nightmare of human and wolf mixed together. The form wolves took when they wanted to kill and nothing else mattered. You disappoint me. The words came out distorted, barely intelligible through a muzzle full of fangs. But you're still my blood, still the last of our line. So I'll give you one more chance. Join me or die with them. Luna's eyes blazed gold. I gave you my answer, her father roared. It shook dust from the quarry walls. Then he attacked. Not Luna, Casimir. The creature moved with inhuman speed. One moment it stood 20 feet away. The next it was on top of Casimir, claws raised to tear out his throat. Luna screamed. Her power exploded outward again, but unfocused, desperate. It hit everyone and no one. Casimir felt the compulsion to freeze warring with the survival instinct to move. His body locked up at the worst possible moment. The claws descended toward his throat. Cade hit the creature from the side. Her metal arm swung in a vicious arc that caught it in the ribs with a sound like a hammer on an anvil. The creature staggered. Cade pressed the advantage, driving it back with a combination of prosthetic strength and decades of combat experience. Severn and the other guards opened fire. Crossbow bolts sprouted from the creature's shoulder, its leg, its side. It roared again, spinning to face this new threat. Luna was moving now, running toward the fight. Her power gathered around her like visible heat waves. Her eyes blazed so bright they cast shadows. Father, stop! The creature ignored her. It was fully beast now. Whatever humanity remained buried under fur and fury and the need to kill. It lunged at Severn, claws extended, jaws open wide enough to bite through armor and bone. Luna hit it with everything she had, the full weight of her Dreamwalker bloodline, the command to stop, to submit, to recognize her authority channeled into a single focused strike of pure dominance. The creature froze mid-lunge. Its claws stopped inches from Severn's face. Every muscle quivered with the effort of fighting the compulsion. Luna stood behind it, her hands extended, her whole body shaking with the effort of holding her father in place. Tears streamed down her face. Please, I don't want to hurt you. You're all I have left. The creature's golden eyes met hers. For a moment, Casimir saw humanity return to them, saw the man behind the monster, saw love and pride and terrible sadness. Then the creature's body began to change again, shrinking, returning to human form, but wrong, too slow, too painful. The compulsion Luna had put on it was forcing the shift, but fighting the creature's will to stay in killing form. The man collapsed to his knees. Blood poured from wounds that should have closed during the shift. His breathing was labored. When he looked up at Luna, his expression was agony. You're strong enough. His voice was fading, stronger than I was, than any of them. But strength isn't enough, little moon. They'll never let you be, never let you live in peace. You're too dangerous for that. I know. Luna's voice was breaking. I've always known. Then promise me, when they come for you, when they finally decide the risk is too great, promise you'll fight, not run, not submit. Fight with everything you are. I promise. The man smiled. It was terrible and beautiful and full of more love than Casimir had ever seen in a father's eyes. Good girl. He died there on the quarry floor, his body finally relaxing into death, the golden light fading from his eyes until they were just eyes, human and empty and gone. Luna fell to her knees beside him. She didn't make a sound, just knelt there in the dust and blood, while her father's body grew cold. Casimir stood frozen, not from Luna's power this time, from the weight of what he'd just witnessed. A father and daughter torn apart by a war that started before either of them was born. A war his family had started, had won, had tried to end by eliminating everyone on the other side. But you couldn't eliminate bloodlines. You could only drive them underground, make them desperate, turn survivors into weapons waiting for a chance to strike back. Cade moved to Luna's side. Put her metal hand on the girl's shoulder. Didn't say anything, just stood there. Solid. Present. Your Highness? Severn's voice was quiet. What are your orders? Casimir looked at Luna. She was broken there on the quarry floor. Not the broken Luna from the ballroom. This was different, deeper. She'd just killed her last living family member to save the life of a man who'd come to judge if she deserved to die. The strategic choice was obvious. Luna Morelli was exactly what the reports claimed. Dangerous beyond measure, powerful enough to threaten the throne. Her father's death proved she could be pushed, manipulated, used. Better to end it now. Quick and final. Casimir's hand went to his blade. Severn watched him, waiting for the order. He thought about the ballroom, the laughter, the broken Luna, a girl who'd come to the capital with hope and left with nothing but shame. He thought about the border territories, how she'd run straight into danger instead of hiding, had volunteered for the work that killed experienced warriors, had saved a settlement from rogues and fought off assassins, and just now stopped her own father from committing murder. She could have let the creature kill him, could have stood aside and let Luna's father tear Casimir's throat out, would have solved her problems cleanly. Instead, she'd saved his life, at the cost of everything she had left. Put your weapons away. Casimir's voice was quiet. Severn stared at him. My lord? I said put them away. He looked at Cade. Get her back to the settlement. Make sure she's somewhere safe. You're letting her live? Cade's single eye was suspicious. I'm making a choice I hope isn't a mistake. Casimir turned away from Luna's kneeling form. But she just saved my life, killed her own father to do it. That deserves something more than execution. She's still dangerous. Severn's voice was hard. Yes. But so am I. So are you. Being dangerous isn't a crime. Using that danger against innocence is... Casimir started walking toward the quarry entrance. And so far, the only people Luna Morel has hurt are people trying to kill her or people she cares about. That's survival, not aggression. The council won't accept this. They'll demand... The council can demand whatever they want. I'm the one who rode out here. I'm the one she spared. And I'm the one making the call. He looked back at Luna one last time. She's not our enemy, not yet. And maybe if we give her a reason not to become one, she never will be. He left the quarry. His guards followed reluctantly. Behind them, Luna knelt beside her father's body and grieved for a family she'd never known, and a legacy that had died in blood 20 years before she was born. They buried Luna's father at dawn. Not in the settlement, in the wild lands north of the quarry, where wolves who didn't belong anywhere were laid to rest. Luna dug the grave herself, refused help, just worked until her hands bled, and the hole was deep enough to hold the last dreamwalker besides herself. Cade stood nearby. Casimir stood farther back, watching. He'd stayed the night, told Severn he needed to be sure the situation was stable. Really, he needed to see this through, needed to understand what he'd chosen to preserve. When Luna finished covering the grave, she stood there for a long time, not crying, not speaking, just standing. Finally, she turned and walked back toward the settlement. When she passed Casimir, she stopped. Thank you. The words were hollow. For not killing me. Don't thank me yet. Casimir's voice was quiet. What I did tonight will have consequences. Political ones. The council will call for your death even louder now, and eventually, I won't be able to protect you. I know. Luna met his eyes. Her own were dark again. The gold burned out. So why did you? Because I'm tired of making decisions out of fear. My family started a war against yours because we were afraid of what you could become. That fear led to massacre. To orphans like you, to survivors like your father who spent 20 years in the wilderness going slowly insane. Casimir looked toward the fresh grave. Maybe if we'd shown mercy back then, offered terms, found a way to coexist with power we didn't understand, maybe we wouldn't be standing here now. Maybe. Luna's voice was flat. Or maybe your family was right. Maybe bloodlines like mine are too dangerous to let live. Maybe my father was right too, that I'll never be safe, never be allowed to exist in peace, that eventually I'll have to become the monster everyone fears or die trying not to. Is that what you believe? Luna was silent for a long moment. Then she shook her head. I don't know what I believe anymore. I came to your ballroom thinking I'd found my purpose. my place. Instead, I lost everything. My home, my innocence, my family. The only thing I have left is my life, and I don't even know if that's worth keeping." Casimir wanted to say something comforting, something reassuring, but lies wouldn't help. And the truth was too brutal, so he said nothing. Luna walked away. Cade fell into step beside her. They disappeared into the settlement, two broken wolves trying to survive in a world that wanted them dead. Severin approached Casimir. "We should return to the capital. You've been gone too long. Your brother will be asking questions." "Let him ask." Casimir stared at the grave. "One more day. I want to make sure the situation is truly stable." "My lord," Severin's voice dropped, "what you did tonight was mercy. But mercy has a price. When the council learns you spared the last Dreamwalker, they'll question your judgment, question your fitness to rule. Then I'll answer their questions." Casimir turned toward the settlement. "But I won't murder a girl who saved my life just to prove I'm strong enough to make hard choices. There are harder choices than killing, like choosing to trust when every instinct screams danger." Severin said nothing, but her expression suggested she thought he'd just made the mistake that would cost him everything. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had. 2 days later, Casimir returned to the capital. The city was exactly as he'd left it, golden and gleaming and full of wolves pretending the world wasn't tearing itself apart at the edges. His brother met him at the palace gates. Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. "You're alive. I'm relieved." "Are you?" Casimir dismounted, handed his horse to a waiting servant. "You don't look relieved. I'm also curious. You left to eliminate a threat. Instead, you stayed in the border territories for 3 days. And from what my sources tell me, the threat is still very much alive. Your sources need to learn discretion. My sources understand that when the future king spares a Dreamwalker, it becomes everyone's business." Adrian fell into step beside him as they entered the palace. "The council has called an emergency session. They want answers, and they won't accept pretty words about mercy and trust. Then I'll give them ugly truth." Casimir's voice was hard. "Luna Morel is dangerous, but she's not our enemy. She's had multiple opportunities to hurt innocents and hasn't taken them. She's fought only in self-defense. She even killed her own father to save my life." Adrian stopped walking. "She what?" "You heard me." Casimir turned to face his brother. "Her father survived the purge, has been living in the wild lands for 20 years, came to recruit her for revenge against the crown. She refused. Fought him, killed him to protect me and my guards. And you believe that wasn't calculated? That she didn't sacrifice one useful piece to secure your trust? I believe she had tears running down her face when she did it. I believe she buried him herself with hands that bled from digging his grave." Casimir's eyes were cold. "And I believe the strategic play would have been to let him kill me. Eliminate the crown prince, throw the succession into chaos, give her time to grow stronger and gather allies. Unless the longer game is to make you trust her, make the council trust her, then strike when everyone's guard is down." Adrian's voice was poisonous. "You're being played, brother, or you're seeing conspiracies where there's only a scared girl trying to survive." Casimir turned away. "I've made my decision. She lives, and anyone who has a problem with that can bring it to me directly." He walked toward the throne room. Behind him, Adrian stood in the corridor and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression, because Adrian had been counting on this exact outcome, had been preparing for it, had made sure every piece was in position, and now his brother had given him exactly the excuse he needed. But the council session was brutal. 12 high lords and ladies from the greatest wolf clans in the kingdom, all of them with opinions, all of them demanding answers. Lord Voss spoke first. His scarred face was grim. "You had the perfect opportunity to eliminate a bloodline threat. Instead, you showed weakness, compassion for our enemies." "She's not our enemy." Casimir's voice was level. "She defended a border settlement, stopped her own father from attacking the crown. Those aren't the actions of someone plotting against us." Lady Meredith of Ironclaw leaned forward. Her green eyes were calculating. Her father was plotting against us, and she carries his blood, his power. How long before that power corrupts her the way it corrupted him? It didn't corrupt him. We did. 20 years of hiding in the wilderness, watching his family get slaughtered, that's what turned him into a monster, not his bloodline. Casimir met each council member's eyes in turn. We created that threat by refusing to show mercy the first time. So your solution is to show mercy now? In hopes she'll be grateful? Lord Kerrigan's laugh was bitter. You're gambling the kingdom's safety on the gratitude of a wolf we humiliated publicly and then sent assassins after. That's not mercy. That's stupidity. The accusations continued, hour after hour. Some council members defended Casimir's choice. Most didn't. The arguments grew heated. Threats were made. Alliances shifted and reformed. Finally, the High Chancellor called for order. His voice cut through the chaos. A decision must be made. The Dreamwalker girl lives or dies. And it must be unanimous. No divided council. No lingering doubts. We put it to a vote now. The vote was 7-5. 7 for execution, 5 for mercy. Casimir had lost. The High Chancellor's expression was grim. Prince Casimir, as future king, you have the right to override this decision, but know that doing so will fracture the council, will create division at a time when we need unity. What say you? Casimir looked around the table, saw the faces of wolves who'd supported his family for generations. Wolves who'd bled for the crown, who'd sacrificed for the kingdom. They weren't wrong to be afraid. Luna Morel was dangerous, her power was immense, and mercy had a price that kingdoms sometimes couldn't afford. But he kept seeing her kneeling in the quarry, crying over her father's body, broken in ways that had nothing to do with power or bloodlines or political threats. I override the vote. His voice was quiet but final. Luna Morel lives, under my personal protection, and anyone who moves against her moves against me. The council erupted. Shouts, accusations. Lady Meredith stood so fast her chair fell backwards. Lord Voss's hand went to his blade. The High Chancellor banged his staff until silence returned. Then you have made your choice, Prince Casimir, and we must live with the consequences. Casimir left the throne room feeling like he'd just signed his own death warrant. Maybe he had. Time would tell. His brother was waiting in the corridor outside. Adrian's expression was sympathetic. That went badly. Could have been worse. Could it? Adrian moved closer. You just overrode a council vote to protect a girl with enough power to overthrow the kingdom. Made yourself responsible for anything she does. Tied your fate to hers. If she fails, you fail. If she falls, you fall. I know what I did. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you just gave your enemies exactly what they needed. Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. Proof that you're too weak to make hard choices, that you prioritize personal feelings over kingdom security, that maybe you're not fit to be king after all. Casimir's blood went cold. You wouldn't. I won't have to. Adrian smiled. You did it to yourself, brother, and when the time comes to choose a new heir, the council will remember this moment. Will remember how you chose mercy over safety, heart over head. He walked away, leaving Casimir standing alone in the corridor. And for the first time since riding to the border territories, Casimir wondered if he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. Not because Luna Morel would betray him, but because his own brother already had. 300 miles away, in a settlement called Thornhaven, Luna Morel woke from a nightmare screaming. The dreams were getting worse. Every night she saw the quarry, her father dying, the choice she'd made. And every night something deeper woke with her, something older. The full weight of her bloodline's power pressing against the inside of her skull like it wanted out. Kate appeared in the doorway. You okay? No. Luna's voice was hollow. I'm not sure I'll ever be okay again. None of us are. Cade sat on the edge of the bed. Her metal arm gleamed in the lamplight. But we survive anyway. That's what border wolves do. Luna looked at her hands. They were steady now. No shaking, no fear, just cold certainty. She'd killed her father to save a prince who'd come to decide if she deserved execution. Had protected the man who represented everything her family had been running from for 20 years. And now she was alone. The last Dreamwalker. The last of a bloodline that once ruled before kingdoms existed, before thrones and crowns and political games. That kind of alone changed you, hollowed you out, left nothing but survival instinct and the will to keep breathing one more day. Cade's voice was quiet. He protected you. The prince. That matters. For now. Luna met her eye. But eventually, someone will convince him I'm too dangerous to let live, or his counsel will force his hand, or he'll decide I'm not worth the political cost. And when that happens, I'll have to make a choice. What choice? Whether to die quietly or burn everything down trying to survive. Luna's expression was terrible. My father wanted me to embrace what I am, to use my power without restraint, to make them pay for what they did to us. And what do you want? I want to be left alone, to exist without being a threat or a weapon or a symbol of something that died 20 years ago. Luna's voice cracked. But I don't think that's possible anymore. I don't think it ever was. Cade was silent for a long moment. Then we prepare. Make you strong enough that when they come, if they come, you can defend yourself. Not with rage or revenge, just pure survival. And if survival means becoming what they fear, then you become it. Cade's single eye was hard. Because dead martyrs don't change anything. Living wolves do. Even ones carrying bloodlines everyone wished would disappear. Luna nodded slowly. The coldness inside her was spreading. Soon it would reach her heart, would freeze the last soft parts until nothing remained but the predator her bloodline had bred her to be. She'd tried to be accepted, had been humiliated. She'd tried to hide, had been hunted. She'd tried to make peace, had killed her own father doing it, and still she wasn't safe. Would never be safe. Because what she was terrified people more than what she'd done. So maybe it was time to stop trying to be acceptable. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop making herself small and harmless to comfort people who'd never accept her anyway. Maybe it was time to be exactly what they feared. Not out of revenge, not out of rage, just cold, practical survival. Because Luna Morell had learned something fundamental in the border territories, something her father had known, something the prince was starting to understand. In a world that wanted you dead, mercy was a luxury you couldn't afford, and soft parts got you killed, so she'd become hard, become cold, become everything necessary to survive. And if that made her the monster they already believed she was, then so be it. At least monsters didn't die from trusting the wrong people. They died fighting, and Luna was done dying quietly. The assassination attempt came 3 weeks after Casimir returned to the capital. Not in the throne room or the training yards where guards stood watch. In his own bedchamber in the deepest hours of night, when even princes were supposed to be safe. He woke to cold steel against his throat. Don't move. The voice was female, professional. A cleaner, then. One of the shadow operatives his family employed for work too dirty to acknowledge. Casimir's eyes adjusted to the darkness. 3 figures stood around his bed, all armed, all positioned to kill before he could shift or call for help. Who sent you? His voice was steady despite the blade pressing hard enough to draw blood. Does it matter? The woman holding the knife smiled. You're going to die either way. We're just deciding if it's quick or if we take our time. It matters. Because if it's the council, they're cowards. If it's my brother, he's a fool. The woman's smile widened. What makes you think it's not both? She pressed the blade harder. Casimir felt blood run down his neck in a warm trickle. His heart was hammering, but his mind was cold and calculating. The window was 15 feet away. Guards patrolled the corridor outside, but the door was thick. They'd never hear him scream. He was going to die here, in his own bed, because he'd chosen mercy over strategy, because he'd trusted that the title of Crown Prince meant something more than a target on his back. The woman raised her blade for the killing stroke. The window exploded inward. Glass shattered across the room like crystalline rain. A figure hurtled through the opening, moving too fast to track. Golden light blazed in the darkness. The woman with the knife flew backwards, slammed into the wall hard enough to crack stone. The other 2 assassins spun toward this new threat. Luna Morell stood in the wreckage of Casimir's window, her eyes burning gold, her presence filling the room like a physical force. She wore the same Border Patrol leathers from Thornhaven. Her hair was wild. Her face was carved from something harder than the girl who'd knelt in that quarry. She looked at the assassins. Her voice was death itself. Leave, now, or I'll show you what a dreamwalker does to people who threaten what's mine. The 2 standing assassins looked at each other, professional killers calculating odds. They'd been told the prince would be alone, vulnerable. Nobody had mentioned the girl with burning eyes who could command submission with a word. One of them made the mistake of attacking anyway. He lunged at Luna with a blade aimed at her heart. She didn't move. didn't dodge, just met his eyes. Stop. The compulsion hit him like a physical blow. He froze mid-stride, blade extended, every muscle locked. Luna walked past him without a glance, moved to the woman she'd thrown against the wall. The cleaner was trying to stand, blood running from her nose where her face had met stone. Luna grabbed her by the throat, lifted her with strength that shouldn't exist in a frame that size. The woman's feet dangled off the ground. Who sent you? The woman spat blood in Luna's face. Luna's expression didn't change. Her eyes blazed brighter. I asked nicely. Now I'm not asking. The compulsion this time was different, surgical. Luna wasn't forcing submission. She was forcing truth, ripping it out of the woman's mind whether she wanted to give it or not. The cleaner's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. Lord Adrian Thornblood. The words came out strangled. The prince's brother paid us to make it look like natural causes. Heart failure. No evidence. No questions. Luna's jaw tightened. She looked at Casimir. He was sitting up now, one hand pressed to his bleeding throat. Their eyes met across the room, his pale and cold, hers burning gold and full of barely controlled rage. Your own brother sent assassins to kill you in your sleep. Luna's voice was hollow. And you thought I was the threat. She released the woman, let her drop to the floor gasping. Then Luna turned to the frozen assassin. Her power released him. He stumbled backward, weapon clattering to the floor. All three of you, get out! Tell Adrian Thornblood his plan failed. Tell him the Dreamwalker is watching. And if he tries this again, I won't show mercy. The assassins fled, scrambled through the door and into the corridor beyond. Their footsteps echoed as they ran for their lives. Silence filled the bedchamber. Luna stood in the wreckage of broken glass and shattered assumptions. Casimir stood on the other side of his bed, blood still dripping from his throat, staring at the girl who'd just saved his life for the second time. How did you know? I didn't. Luna's eyes faded from gold to dark. The power receded but didn't disappear entirely. I just knew something was wrong, felt it 3 days ago, like pressure building before a storm. So I came. You came 300 miles because you felt something might be wrong. I came because you protected me when you should have killed me. Because you overrode your counsel to let me live. Because every instinct I have said you were in danger. Luna's voice went quiet. And because I'm tired of people I care about dying when I could have saved them. Casimir touched his throat. His fingers came away red. You broke into the royal palace, past all the guards and wards and security, climbed 4 stories to my window to save me from assassins sent by my own brother. Yes. Why? Luna looked at him, really looked at him. Not the crown prince, not the future king, just the man who'd chosen mercy when strategy demanded execution, who'd ridden 300 miles to judge her himself instead of sending killers, who'd stood in a quarry and watched her kill her own father and chosen to trust her anyway. Because you're the only person in power who's ever treated me like I'm human instead of just a threat to be eliminated. Luna's voice cracked. And because I'm selfish. Because keeping you alive keeps me alive. Because if you die, whoever takes your place won't be as willing to let a Dreamwalker exist. So this is survival, self-interest. Luna met his eyes. If you want to call it that. Sure. But Casimir saw the truth behind her words. Saw it in the way her hand shook now that the fight was over. In the way she'd risked everything to come here. In the way she'd called him mine like it was a fact that didn't need explanation. She cared. Despite everything. Despite the humiliation and the hunting and the assassination attempts. She cared enough to break into a palace and face down killers to keep him breathing. That kind of loyalty was rarer than any bloodline power, and more dangerous. Guards were pounding on the door now, shouting, demanding entry. Casimir looked at the broken window, at Luna standing in borrowed moonlight with glass shards glittering in her hair like stars. You need to leave, before they break through. If they find you here, the council will use it as proof you're a threat. Will demand immediate execution. I know. Luna moved toward the window. But understand something. Your brother just declared war. Not on you, on both of us. Because he knows as long as you're alive and I'm alive, his path to the throne is blocked. Then what do I do? Survive. Luna climbed onto the windowsill. Her eyes flashed gold one more time. And trust that when he comes for you again, I'll know. I'll feel it. And I'll be there. She jumped. disappeared into the night 4 stories below. Casimir rushed to the window, but she was already gone. Vanished into shadows like she'd never existed. The door burst open. Severin rushed in, blade drawn, a dozen guards behind her. They took in the scene, the broken glass, the blood on Casimir's throat, the empty room. "My lord." "What happened?" Casimir touched his bleeding neck. Considered lying, considered truth, settled for something in between. Assassins. 3 of them. They're gone now. Gone where? Severin's eyes swept the room. Out the window. After I fought them off. Severin looked at the shattered glass, at the crack in the wall where one of them had hit, at Casimir's bleeding throat that should have been a killing wound. Her expression said she knew he was lying, but she also knew better than to call her future king a liar in front of witnesses. "Shall I alert the council? Begin an investigation?" "No." Casimir's voice was hard. "This stays quiet. Between us. Nobody else needs to know how close they came. My lord, if there are assassins in the palace, there aren't, not anymore. And they won't be back." Severin studied him, then nodded slowly. "As you command." She dismissed the other guards, stayed behind to help bandage his throat and clean the blood. Neither of them spoke about the impossibility of one man fighting off 3 trained killers, about the crack in the wall that suggested superhuman strength, about the golden light several guards swore they'd seen blazing from the window before the glass broke. Some truths were too dangerous to acknowledge out loud. Yes. Adrian Thornblood received the news of his failed assassination an hour before dawn. His 3 cleaners stood in his private study, bloodied and terrified, telling him about a girl with burning eyes who'd appeared from nowhere and thrown trained killers around like children's toys. He listened in silence. His expression never changed. When they finished, he dismissed them with a wave of his hand. Then he sat alone in his study and smiled. Perfect. This was perfect. He'd known the assassination would likely fail. The girl had proven too unpredictable, too powerful, too drawn to his brother for reasons Adrian didn't fully understand. But he hadn't needed it to succeed. He'd needed it to force Casimir's hand, to make his brother choose. And Casimir had chosen to hide Luna Morel's involvement, had chosen to protect her even when it meant lying to his own guard captain, had chosen to prioritize one girl over kingdom security. That choice was everything Adrian needed. He pulled out parchment, began writing carefully worded letters to council members he'd been cultivating for months. Letters describing how the crown prince was compromised, how his judgment was clouded by misplaced mercy toward a girl who could dominate minds and command submission, how his recent behavior suggested he was either under her influence or willingly collaborating with a known bloodline threat. Each letter was poison disguised as concern. Each one planted seeds of doubt that would grow into demands for action. By the time Adrian finished, dawn was breaking over the capital. Servants were starting their morning routines. The city was waking to another day pretending everything was stable and safe and under control. But Adrian knew better. He'd just lit a fuse that would burn through the kingdom until everything exploded. And when it did, when Casimir fell and the throne sat empty, Adrian would be there to claim what should have been his from the beginning. The crown, the power, the kingdom itself. All he had to do was make sure his brother and the Dreamwalker girl destroyed each other in the process. Luna made it back to Thornhaven 3 days later. She'd ridden through the night, changing horses twice, avoiding main roads. Her body ached. Her mind was exhausted. But she was alive. Casimir was alive. That was enough. Cade met her at the settlement gates. One look at Luna's face told her everything she needed to know. It was bad. Worse. Luna dismounted. Her legs nearly gave out. Cade caught her. They made it to Luna's small room in the boarding house before Luna collapsed onto the narrow bed. "Tell me." Cade's voice was quiet. So Luna told her. The assassination. The brothers' betrayal. The fact that Casimir was now trapped between family ambition and council fear with Luna as the weapon both sides would use against him. When she finished, Cade was silent for a long time. Then she spoke. "You care about him." It wasn't a question. Luna didn't bother denying it. "I care about the only person in power who's treated me like I'm worth something more than execution or exploitation." That's not the same as caring about him. Cade's single eye was sharp. You broke into a palace, fought trained killers, revealed yourself to royal guards who'll report what they saw, all to save a prince who humiliated you in front of his entire court. He also chose mercy when strategy demanded my death. Luna's voice was flat. That deserves loyalty. Loyalty? Cade snorted. Is that what you're calling it? What else would I call it? Love. Cade said the word like a diagnosis. Dangerous, stupid, but that's what it is. You love him, and that's going to get you killed. Luna's hands clenched. I don't love him. I barely know him. No. You know enough. Know he's willing to sacrifice his political standing to protect you. Know he rides into danger himself instead of sending others. Know he sees you as a person instead of a weapon. For someone who's been treated like a monster her whole life, that's enough to build love from. Luna turned away, stared at the wall. Cade was wrong. Had to be wrong. Because love was a luxury she couldn't afford. Love made you weak, made you hesitate, made you human in a world that punished humanity. But she kept seeing Casimir's face in the ballroom, in the quarry, in his bedchamber with blood on his throat and trust in his eyes despite everything. Kept feeling the moment her power recognized him, not as a mate bond, something deeper, something that made the gold light in her eyes flare brighter, something that made her willing to face down killers and royal guards and political consequences just to keep him breathing. If that was love, then Cade was right. It was dangerous, stupid, and probably going to get her killed. But Luna had already decided that dying to protect something worth protecting was better than surviving by becoming something that deserved destruction. So if loving the crown prince was what got her killed, at least she'd die as herself. Not as the monster everyone feared she'd become. Cade seemed to read her thoughts. Your father wanted you to burn the kingdom down. Your enemies want you dead. And you're choosing a third path, the one where you protect the kingdom by protecting its future king, even though that kingdom has given you nothing but pain. Luna's voice was quiet. Maybe I'm trying to prove everyone wrong, that bloodlines don't determine destiny, that power doesn't have to corrupt, that mercy can be strength instead of weakness. Or maybe you just want him to see you the way you wish everyone had seen you, as someone worth loving instead of fearing. Luna closed her eyes. Maybe both. Then you'd better survive what's coming, because the moment his council finds out about tonight, they'll demand your head. And this time, he won't be able to protect you, not without losing the throne. So what do I do? Cade's metal fingers drummed on her knee. What you've always done, survive. Get stronger. Prepare for the day when protecting him means fighting everyone else, even if that makes me the monster they fear, especially then. Cade stood. Because monsters who protect what they love are still better than nobles who destroy everything they fear. At least monsters are honest about what they are. She left. Luna lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. Her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't stop. She kept replaying the moment she'd felt Casimir's danger. That pull that had dragged her 300 miles. That certainty that he needed her. It wasn't the mate bond her grandmother had predicted. It was something else. Something her Dreamwalker bloodline recognized on a level beyond conscious thought. Pack. That's what it was. Despite everything, despite the politics and bloodlines and assassination attempts, some part of Luna had claimed Casimir Thornblood as Pack, as someone worth protecting with her life. And Pack bonds didn't break, didn't fade, didn't respond to strategy or survival calculations. They just were. Absolute and unbreakable and stronger than any power her bloodline had ever produced, which meant Luna was in deeper trouble than she'd thought, because you couldn't unfeel Pack. Couldn't turn off that instinct to protect. Couldn't walk away when your pack was in danger. All you could do was fight, survive, and hope that when the final reckoning came, you were strong enough to keep them alive, even if it meant dying yourself. Kamarkit. The council's response came faster than Casimir expected. 2 days after the assassination attempt, formal summons arrived. Emergency session. Mandatory attendance. The language was polite, but the meaning was clear. They knew. Somehow they knew about Luna. Casimir entered the throne room to find not just the council, but half the noble houses in the capital. Seats filled with wolves who'd never attended a council session before. Lord Voss, Lady Meredith, the Blackthorn and Ravencroft families, Even minor lords from territories so remote they usually ignored capital politics entirely. Someone had assembled an audience, had made sure this session would be public, witnessed, recorded for history. Adrian stood near the High Chancellor. His expression was perfectly crafted sympathy, but his eyes glittered with triumph. Casimir took his place at the head of the council table. His father, the current king, sat on his throne looking old and tired. He'd let Casimir handle most kingdom business for the past year, his health failing, his grip on power loosening, which meant the wolves gathered here saw weakness, smelled opportunity, were ready to tear down a crown prince they feared couldn't lead. The High Chancellor stood, his voice carried across the assembled nobles. This council convenes to address a matter of kingdom security, specifically the crown prince's relationship with Luna Morelle, the known Dreamwalker bloodline carrier, the woman we voted to execute 3 weeks past. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Casimir kept his expression neutral. The Chancellor continued, "We have received reports that said Dreamwalker entered the royal palace 2 nights ago, breached security, accessed the Crown Prince's private chambers, and subsequently disappeared without capture or consequence." More murmurs, louder now. Casimir could feel the mood shifting, turning hostile. Lord Voss stood. His scarred face was grim. "Is this true, Your Highness? Did Luna Morelle enter your bedchamber?" Casimir met his eyes. "Yes." The room erupted. Shouts, accusations, demands for explanation. The Chancellor banged his staff. Silence returned slowly. Lady Meredith spoke next. Her voice was poisonously sweet. "And what was the purpose of this midnight visit? Was she there to seduce you? To use her bloodline powers to compromise your judgment?" "She was there to save my life." Casimir's voice cut through the noise. "Assassins entered my bedchamber that night. 3 of them. Trained killers sent to murder me in my sleep. Luna Morelle stopped them." More eruptions. The Chancellor struggled to maintain order. Finally, the king himself raised his hand. The room fell silent. His voice was weak but carried authority. "Assassins in the palace. That is a serious claim. Do you have proof?" "The bodies of men who fled before I could capture them. But yes." Casimir pulled the bandage from his throat. The wound was still visible, still healing. "This is where one of them held a blade while debating whether to kill me quickly or slowly." "Who sent them?" The king's eyes were sharp despite his failing health. Casimir looked at Adrian. His brother's expression never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. Just for a moment. Fear maybe, or calculation. "I don't know. Yet. But I'm investigating." "Liar." Adrian's voice was soft, but it carried. "You know exactly who sent them, because the Dreamwalker girl told you after she forced the information from their minds using her bloodline compulsion." The room went deadly quiet. Casimir's blood ran cold, because Adrian was right. The assassins had told Luna everything, had been compelled to reveal their employer. And if Adrian was admitting that publicly, it meant he'd already prepared for this moment, had already turned it to his advantage somehow. So what if she did? Casimir kept his voice level. The information was accurate, and it saved my life. It also proved she can rip thoughts from people's minds whether they consent or not. Adrian stepped forward, that she can violate the most fundamental privacy, that she can learn any secret, any plan, any whisper of conspiracy by simply commanding truth from anyone she chooses. That's not how her power works, isn't it? Adrian looked at the assembled nobles. "Tell me, brothers and sisters of the council, how comfortable are you knowing a Dreamwalker can force you to reveal your thoughts, your plans, your fears? How safe does that make you feel?" Murmurs of agreement, nervous faces. Casimir could see the trap closing, could see how Adrian had turned Luna's rescue strategy into proof of why she was dangerous. "My brother is alive because of her. That should count for something." "It counts for proof that she sees value in keeping you alive." Adrian's voice hardened. "But why? What does a Dreamwalker gain from protecting a crown prince, unless she's already influenced his judgment, already planted compulsions in his mind that make him protective of her, make him willing to sacrifice kingdom security for one girl's life? That's not... Can you prove it?" Adrian looked at the king. "Father, can he prove his judgment hasn't been compromised? That his decisions regarding Luna Morelle are his own and not the result of bloodline manipulation? The king looked at Casimir. For the first time in his life, Casimir saw doubt in his father's eyes. Not much, just a flicker, but enough. Enough to change everything. Casimir, his father's voice was heavy. Have you been compromised? No. Are you certain? Because bloodline compulsion is subtle. Victims often don't realize they've been influenced until it's too late. I'm certain. Casimir held his father's gaze. Luna Morel has never used her power on me, never tried to influence my decisions, never done anything but exist and try to survive while everyone debates whether she deserves to live. Then explain your decisions. The king leaned forward. Explain why you spared her when the council voted for execution. Why you hid her involvement in fighting the assassins. Why you seem willing to risk political instability to protect one girl. Casimir looked around the throne room, at the nobles waiting for his answer, at Adrian smiling like a wolf who'd cornered wounded prey, at his father who genuinely needed to understand. He could lie, could claim strategy, could manufacture justifications that made his choices look calculated instead of emotional. But he was tired of lying, tired of pretending politics mattered more than basic humanity, tired of watching people make decisions out of fear instead of conscience. So he told the truth. I protect her because it's the right thing to do, because we slaughtered her family for the crime of being born with power we didn't understand, because she's had every reason to become the monster we fear and has chosen not to, because mercy should mean something more than weakness, and because if being king means executing scared girls to make nobles comfortable, then maybe I'm not fit to wear the crown after all. Silence. Total and absolute. Casimir's words hung in the air like smoke. Then Adrian spoke. And there it is. His voice was soft, triumphant. My brother admits he prioritizes personal morality over kingdom security, that he would rather be right than be effective, that he cares more about one girl than the thousands who depend on royal leadership. Adrian looked at the council, at the assembled nobles, at the king, a leader who chooses mercy over strategy, compassion over strength, personal feelings over political necessity. Is that who you want as your next king? Is that who you trust to lead this kingdom through the threats that gather at our borders? Murmurs of agreement, heads nodding. Casimir could see opinions shifting, could see Adrian's careful manipulation bearing fruit. The High Chancellor stood. His expression was pained. Prince Casimir, the council must vote, not on Luna Morel's fate, but on yours, on whether you remain crown prince and heir, or whether your judgment has been sufficiently compromised to require a change in succession. Casimir's hands clenched. This was it, the moment Adrian had been engineering, the trap finally springing closed. Before he could respond, the throne room doors burst open. Luna Morel walked in. She moved through the packed crowd like water through stone. Nobles scrambled out of her way. Guards moved to intercept, but something in her burning gold eyes made them hesitate. She walked straight to the council table, stood in front of Casimir. Her presence filled the massive room. You want to debate whether he's been compromised? Her voice carried to every corner. Fine, let's settle it now. She turned to face the assembled wolves. Her eyes blazed bright enough to hurt. Every noble in the room felt the weight of her power pressing down on them, felt the command to kneel that their instincts screamed to obey. I am Luna Morel, last of the Dreamwalker bloodline, and I have never once used my power to influence Prince Casimir Thornblood. Not in his ballroom, not in the border territories, not in his bedchamber while saving his life. Never. How do we know that's true? Lady Meredith's voice was shrill. How do we know you're not controlling him right now? Because if I was controlling him, you'd all be dead. Luna's voice was ice. I could force every wolf in this room to kneel, to submit, to walk out those doors and never come back. Could make the king himself declare me queen and you'd all smile and applaud because I commanded it. She let the threat hang for a moment. Then her eyes dimmed slightly. But I haven't. Because unlike everyone here, I understand that power used to dominate creates enemies, creates resistance, creates the exact situation my bloodline faced 20 years ago when fear turned into genocide. So instead, I've used my power exactly 3 times. To stop rogues from killing a border settlement, to stop my own father from murdering this prince, and to stop assassins from cutting his throat in the night. Every single time I've used it to protect, not to dominate. Then why? Lord Voss demanded. Why protect him? What do you gain? Luna looked at Casimir. Her expression was terrible in its honesty. I gained the chance to prove that bloodlines don't determine destiny, that power doesn't have to corrupt, that a dreamwalker can exist without becoming a tyrant, and I gained the one person in this entire kingdom who's ever looked at me and seen something worth protecting instead of something that needs destroying. She turned back to the crowd. Her voice dropped, became almost gentle. You're all so afraid of what I might become that you can't see what I am. A scared girl trying to survive in a world that's wanted her dead since the moment she was born. And the Crown Prince saw that, chose to show mercy, to trust me when everyone else demanded my execution. That's not compromise, that's not manipulation, that's just basic humanity. Something apparently in short supply among people who call themselves leaders. Luna looked at the king, at the High Chancellor, at the council members who held Casimir's fate in their hands. You want to remove him as heir? Fine. Do it. Prove that fear and political expedience matter more than integrity. That being right matters less than being ruthless. But understand this. If you do, you'll lose the only prince in living memory who's tried to break the cycle of fear and violence that's defined royal rule for generations. She stepped back, stood beside Casimir, her eyes still blazing, her presence still dominating the room. And know that wherever he goes, I go. Because he's worth protecting, even from his own family, even from his own kingdom, even if it costs me everything. Silence. Adrian's expression had gone cold. His trap had just been disrupted in the worst possible way, because Luna hadn't defended herself. She'd defended Casimir, had made removing him look like cowardice instead of strategy. The High Chancellor looked at the king. Your Majesty. The vote. The old king looked at his two sons, Casimir standing straight and proud with a dreamwalker at his side, Adrian standing alone but surrounded by political allies. Then he looked at Luna, really looked at her, saw past the burning eyes and bloodline power to the girl underneath, the one who'd just walked into a room full of enemies to protect someone who mattered to her. No vote. The king's voice was final. My son Casimir remains crown prince and heir. His judgment stands, and this council will not question it again. Father, Adrian started. Enough. The king's hand came down on his throne arm. I've heard enough plotting, enough fear-mongering, enough schemes disguised as concern. Casimir made the right choice, showed mercy when strategy demanded blood. That's the kind of king this kingdom needs, not another ruler who burns people alive for having the wrong bloodline. He looked at Adrian. And if certain parties have a problem with that, they're welcome to take it up with me directly, before I'm too old and weak to respond appropriately. The threat was clear. Adrian's face went white, then red. But he bowed stiffly and stepped back. The king looked at Luna. Girl, you're dismissed. Return to wherever you came from. Stay out of capital politics, and try not to give the council more reason to fear you. Luna bowed. Her eyes finally dimmed from gold to dark. She turned to leave. Casimir caught her arm, spoke quietly so only she could hear. Thank you. Luna met his eyes. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. Your brother won't stop, and next time he'll be smarter about it. Then we'll be smarter too. Luna's expression was sad. You still don't understand. Being smart isn't enough. Being right isn't enough. Sometimes survival requires becoming what you hate, making choices that destroy the parts of you worth saving. Her hand came up, touched his face gently. One brief moment of contact. I hope you never have to learn that lesson, but I'm afraid you will. Soon. She pulled away, walked out of the throne room, through the crowd that parted like water, out the massive doors, gone. Casimir stood there with her touch still burning on his face, knowing she was right, knowing the battle had just begun, knowing that protecting her and protecting his kingdom were about to become impossible to do simultaneously, and knowing he'd choose her anyway, every time, no matter the cost. Because some things mattered more than crowns and kingdoms and political survival. Some things were worth burning the world down to protect, even if it meant becoming the monster everyone feared in the process. Mike. 3 days later, Adrian made his move. Not against Casimir, not directly. That had failed twice. The assassins, the council session, both had only made his brother stronger. So Adrian went for the real target, the thing Casimir actually cared about protecting, Luna Mirella. He assembled a force. Not cleaners this time. Real soldiers, loyal to him personally. 30 wolves trained for combat, armed with weapons designed to neutralize bloodline powers. Silver chains, binding wards, sedatives that worked even on dreamwalkers. Then he rode for the border territories. For Thornhaven. For the settlement where Luna had run after saving his brother. He would capture her, bring her back to the capital in chains, put her on trial for entering the palace, for attacking royal guards, for using bloodline compulsion on members of the nobility. The charges didn't matter. What mattered was forcing Casimir to choose between his crown and the girl, between his kingdom and his conscience, between being king and being human. And whichever choice Casimir made, Adrian won. If Casimir abandoned Luna to save his crown, he'd be broken, hollowed out. A puppet king easy to manipulate. If Casimir tried to save her, he'd lose everything, would have to fight his own kingdom, would prove every fear about being compromised. Either way, the crown would be Adrian's within a year. The force rode through the night, covered ground fast. By dawn of the fourth day, they reached Thornhaven. The settlement never saw them coming. Adrian's wolves hit the gates at sunrise, overwhelmed the guards before they could raise an alarm, swept through the streets, arresting anyone who resisted. They found Luna in the boarding house. She fought, brought her power to bear with devastating effect. 5 soldiers went down before the binding wards activated. Silver chains wrapped around her wrists and throat, disrupting the connection between her will and her bloodline abilities. The gold light flickered, died. Luna collapsed, gasping, powerless for the first time since her abilities had awakened. Adrian stood over her. His expression was triumph and cold satisfaction. "Hello, Luna Morel. You're coming with me. And this time, there's no one here to save you." Luna looked up at him through the hair falling across her face. Her eyes were dark now. Normal. But they held something worse than power. They held hate. Pure and absolute and burning. "He'll come for me." Her voice was hoarse from the chains cutting into her throat. "And when he does, you'll learn why mercy is strength instead of weakness." "We'll see." Adrian gestured to his soldiers. "Bind her. Gag her. I don't want to hear another word out of her mouth until we're back at the capital." They dragged her out into the street. The whole settlement watched. Cade was there, held back by 3 soldiers, her metal arms sparking as she fought to reach Luna. Captain Rourke stood with his hands bound, blood running from a cut above his eye. No one could stop this. No one could help. Luna was dragged to a horse, thrown across it like cargo. The binding chains made her powerless, made her just a girl, the broken Luna. Finally, truly broken. Adrian mounted his own horse, looked back at the settlement one last time, then led his force south toward the capital, toward a trial that would end only one way. In Luna's execution, public and final and absolute. And when Casimir heard the news, when he learned his brother had captured the girl he'd sworn to protect, he would have to choose. His throne or her life. His kingdom or his heart. The future everyone expected or the one person who made him want to be better than his bloodline demanded. Adrian smiled as they rode. Either way, he'd already won. Behind them, in Thornhaven, Cade finally broke free of her captors. She ran to where Rourke was struggling to his feet. "We have to warn him. Send word to the prince." Rourke wiped blood from his face. "Won't matter. By the time word reaches the capital, she'll already be there, already in chains." "Then what do we do?" Cade's single eye was hard, her metal hand clenched into a fist. "We pray that boy loves her as much as I think he does. Because if he does, this kingdom is about to tear itself apart. And maybe..." Her voice went quiet. "Maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe mercy and monsters need to burn it all down before anything better can grow." They stood in the empty street while the sun rose over Thornhaven. While 300 miles south, Luna Morel rode toward her execution in chains. And while in the capital, Crown Prince Casimir Thornblood woke to news that would change everything, that would force him to choose between the crown he'd spent his life preparing to wear and the girl who'd shown him what ruling with honor actually meant. That would start a war no one was ready for. A war between brothers, between bloodlines, between fear and hope and everything in between. The war Luna's father had wanted. That the Purge had tried to prevent. That 20 years of careful political stability had been built to avoid. It was coming anyway. Inevitable as sunrise. brutal as winter, and it would end with either a kingdom reborn or a kingdom burning. There was no middle ground anymore, no compromise, no political solution. Just fire and blood and the choice every wolf had to make when pushed past breaking. Fight or submit, burn or bow, live free or die trying. Luna had made her choice, had walked into that throne room and declared her allegiance for everyone to see. Now it was Casimir's turn, and the whole kingdom would learn what happened when you forced a crown prince to choose between power and principle, between throne and heart, between being the king they expected and the man he'd become. The answer was coming, fast and final and devastating, and no one, not Adrian, not the council, not the kingdom itself, was ready for what that answer would cost. The messenger reached Casimir at dawn, a border patrol runner who'd ridden 3 horses to death covering the distance from Thornhaven to the capital in 2 days. The man collapsed at the palace gates with blood foaming from his lips and a message clutched in his fist. Prince Adrian has taken Luna Morel, 30 soldiers, silver chains, heading to capital for trial. She fought. They broke her. Casimir read the note 3 times. Each word burned into his mind like a brand on flesh. The paper crumpled in his fist. Around him, the morning court was assembling. Nobles arriving for another day of political theater. Servants setting out breakfast in the great hall. The machinery of kingdom continuing like the world wasn't ending. He found Captain Severn in the training yard. She took one look at his face and dismissed the recruits she'd been drilling. What happened? My brother took her. Casimir's voice was hollow. Captured her in Thornhaven. She's on her way here, in chains. Severn's expression went cold. On what authority? His own. Casimir looked at the practice weapons racked along the wall. Swords and spears and tools for pretend violence. None of it real. None of it mattering. He's charging her with entering the palace, attacking guards, using bloodline compulsion on nobility. Those charges are true. She was saving my life. She was... It doesn't matter. Severn cut him off. She's not one of us. Not protected by law or custom. Your brother can charge her with anything, and the council will support it because she terrifies them. Then I'll stop it. Casimir's hands clenched. I'll order her release. You don't have that authority. Not while your father lives. Not until you're actually king. And even then, the council has veto power over clemency and bloodline cases. So I do nothing? Just watch while they execute her? Severn was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke carefully. You do what you've always done, what your bloodline has done for generations. You choose the kingdom over the individual. You make the hard call. You let her die so the realm stays stable. That's what a king would do. Casimir met her eyes. I'm not sure I want to be that kind of king anymore. Then what kind do you want to be? The kind who doesn't sacrifice people who saved his life just to make nobles comfortable. The kind who understands that real strength isn't about how many people you're willing to kill. It's about who you're willing to die for. Severn's expression shifted, became something harder to read. If you move against your brother publicly, it's civil war. The kingdom splits. Wolves die. Everything you've trained for, everything your family built, burns. I know. And you're willing to risk that? For one girl? Casimir thought about the ballroom. The broken Luna. The girl who'd become something fiercer and stranger and more honest than anyone in his polished capital. Who'd looked at him with burning gold eyes and called him hers like it was simple truth instead of treason. Not for one girl. For the principle she represents. That power doesn't have to mean domination. That bloodlines don't determine worth. That maybe the way we've always done things isn't the only way, or even the right way. He turned toward the palace. Started walking. Severn followed. What are you going to do? Something stupid. Something that'll probably get me killed. But at least I'll die as myself instead of as another king who ruled through fear. Adrian's force reached the capital by noon. They entered through the south gates with Luna bound and gagged on a horse, displayed for everyone to see. The broken Luna. Finally, truly broken. Word spread through the city like wildfire. Crowds gathered, some jeered, some watched in silence. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing because speaking up meant becoming a target yourself. Luna kept her eyes down. The silver chains around her wrists and throat burned against her skin. Disrupted the connection between will and power. Left her as helpless as she'd been before Thornhaven, before her abilities manifested, before she'd learned that strength could protect as well as destroy. Adrian rode at the front of the procession, triumphant. He'd sent word ahead. The council was assembling. The trial would begin immediately. Swift and final. No delays, no opportunities for his brother to interfere. They reached the palace. Dragged Luna from the horse. Her legs gave out. The chains had weakened her. Days of riding bound. Little food or water. The silver burning through clothes and skin. Two soldiers hauled her to her feet, dragged her toward the throne room where justice pretended to exist. In the crowd, someone spat at her. Others followed. Luna felt the hatred rolling off them in waves. These people didn't know her, didn't care about truth or context or the fact that everything she'd done was survival or protection.